are here for the regular meeting of Lacombe City Council for June the 14th. It is 5:02, and I will call the meeting to order. I'll let council ponder the agenda for one moment. And just a brief community-oriented announcement here. Councillor Hibbs and myself had an opportunity to attend the invitation to the Father Lacombe School, and they presented us today the Friends of Catholic Education Award. I understand an item that is not necessarily given out each and every year, but they went on to explain in great detail about the very positive experience that they have had with our planning and development department, which is certainly music to my ears, as I expect is everyone else in the room. And they also want to gratefully acknowledge our recreation department for the wonderful assistance that they've had in utilizing the facilities there while they're undergoing some rather difficult circumstances with their gymnasium being demolished already and school still being in. So it was very nice to receive this. Nice little Catholic Star Award here. And as I said to Vice Principal Dustin today, we will proudly display it at City Hall. And I did have an opportunity to speak with the Planning and Development Department today. To extend the council's thanks for a job well done. I think that it's been a focus of this council to see that Lacombe is I'm going to say a business friendly, however, a school is still, as far as the planning and development department is concerned, it still falls in the same realm. So very nice to see, and congratulations to both those departments that we outlined. So the agenda, does anybody have anything they care to add or change? Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'd like to add a land issue to our in-camera session.
Very good. Chief Gowdy?
Just due to the public hearing is scheduled at 5:30. The land use bylaw 401.35 is second, third reading are scheduled at item 5.1. Recommended third until after the public hearing. Start with items 5.2.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move the agenda as amended.
Very good. So just so everybody's on the same page here, we've added item 9.4 land, and the appropriate point section would be
7. Point. The point section.
Okay. We'll have that updated for our next minutes, but land certainly is nice. So item 9.4 and maybe some adjustment to the order of the agenda to accommodate our public hearing.
Section 24.
24. Thank you very much. Point section 24 on item 9.4 land discussion. Anyone else? All those unanimous. Thank you very much. So let's move down to item 5.2 under request for decision, Kew Gardens playground replacement contract award. Director Duke, I see you have joined us. Are you prepared to go through this item now?
I am, Mayor Creasy. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here with Recreation and Culture Manager Stewart, who happens to be managing this project. And so she's here also to answer some questions if you happen to have any. Tonight, administration is proposing to replace a playground located in the center of English Estates subdivision off Pickwick Lane in the northeast of the city. There's a photo of the location on agenda page number 20 for your reference. The playground is largely aged wood. We believe it's more than 25 years old. It is not attracted to children with today's expectations, and it's quite difficult to maintain to safe standards. So with that information, council approved this project as part of the 2021 capital budget process. It is a single playground replacement outside of the normal program of playground life cycle replacements, which I'll just remind council that's once every other year we budget for replacement of 2 playgrounds. This is in between 2 of those as a standalone. It had been slated for renewal in 2016, but was not due to budget restraints. And then it was subsequently overlooked in 2018 when we resumed the normal life cycle replacement schedule. So as expected, administration issued a request for proposals in March for options to renew the playground to existing service level, which is a program goal. The city in total received 9 proposals, all of them meeting the mandatory requirements, while also falling within the $150,000 approved budget for the project. A team here at City Hall evaluated the proposals and presented the options of the highest ranking proponent, Canadian Recreation Solutions, to the Rec and Culture Board. There were 3 structure options actually available from this company, 2 of the 2 options as requested, plus 1 with a different color scheme. And of course, there's other equipment as well, and a combination of those in three options then were presented to the Rec Board. The board recommends option 1 to council at the cost of $149,750. And that option, in fact, the redacted proposal in its entirety is attached to the agenda and to this RFD. So just a further comment, option 1 meets city needs while including unique features, playground features not available in other city playgrounds at present. If a contract can be awarded tonight, the proponent can order the structures and equipment necessary and the project can commence in early fall and can complete by October 1st, 2021. So with that, we'll take any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Director Duke. I guess perhaps the most obvious question is, what's the justification for doing this now out of the normal 2-year cycle?
Yeah, okay, again, to reiterate, we've had some complaints about this location over the years, and I believe one that we responded to last year was where we really had to look at the history of it. And again, it was missed in the course of making the selections for playground replacements in 2018. It's the oldest one we have by far. It's older than the last 2 that we replaced at Heritage and Lincoln. And so it's out of step, and it's just not getting any better. Most importantly is it's not particularly safe. We do our best, but it's not kept up to current standards.
Thank you. And should we expect only 1 to be done then potentially next year in the normal rotation, or will this project not be affected by that?
This project will not necessarily affect that cycle. Ordinarily speaking, administration would propose 2 just to keep in step. However, that would be up to council to decide in the course of the budget process, approval process in this year for 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I'm pleased to see the design as a considerable upgrade from what is there. I know I used to take my kids there when they were little, so that's a long time ago. Already at that point in time, it was a little dated. So this is definitely well overdue for an upgrade. And given that, I will move that council approve the award of a contract to Canadian Recreation Solutions in the amount of $149,750 plus GST to replace the playground at Kew Gardens with option 1 proposal.
And have any additional questions or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Duke. Very good. So the next one up is item 5.3, the security for development agreements, surety bonds. Director Thompson, that item is one of yours.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, administration is asking Council to endorse the use of surety bonds as an acceptable form of development security. Development security is like a deposit made by a land developer to the city as an assurance tool that their project will meet the terms and conditions of the development agreement and/or development permit. Security is particularly important because physical assets such as roads, sidewalks, and utility mains are constructed by a developer but turned over to the city for perpetual maintenance and ultimately replacement at the city's cost. For this reason, it is very important that the assets are constructed as approved and adhere to standard specifications. In the unlikely event that issues do arise and a developer will not or cannot address them themselves, the development security or this deposit can be accessed by the city to address the development issues, typically to repair a deficiency that arose during the warranty period. Security is returned to the developer in part at the construction completion stage and then fully at the final acceptance stage following the warranty period. Administration is proposing a new security option for land developers, a surety bond tailored for the land development market. Developers can now apply to a surety company to purchase a surety bond to cover the city's development security requirements. From the municipality's point of view, cash, letters of credit, and the proposed development surety bond offers identical protection as security with one minor but notable difference. A surety bond is only good if the surety company itself is in business. It would be problematic for the city if it needed to draw on a development bond from a surety company that is no longer in business. Larger centers such as the City of Calgary, the City of Edmonton, and Red Deer address this issue by requiring the surety company to have an AM Best rating of A- or greater. Administration proposes to align our development surety bond requirements with those of the City of Red Deer. Administration also sought legal advice on the use of surety bonds as security in developments, and overall the advice was favorable to development bonds as they allow the municipality to exercise its discretion to call in the bond without the surety company having a legal defense for refusing. However, other municipalities in the region have not yet tested the bonds in court. Overall, surety bonds offer the city identical protection as its currently accepted forms of security, with significant benefits to developers who qualify for it from the surety company. For these reasons, administration recommends council accept surety bonds as an acceptable form of development security. If council has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I guess I was curious what prompted this, because it's not been tested tons by our fellow municipalities and certainly not in the comparator municipalities. So was there an incident that prompted it, or did a developer request that? I'm curious.
Thank you, Councillor Hoekstra. Certainly, we were prompted by a developer who made us aware of the product, and so we followed up with the particular surety company that offered that product, as well as reached out to our neighboring municipalities to learn more about it, and that led us to the City of Calgary, the City of Edmonton, and Red Deer, as well as Beaumont and Sylvan Lake, who are using development surety bonds as a acceptable form of security. So it was a product that we were not aware of before and pursued it once we were made aware of it.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I've been doing this for a little while now, and I've never heard, is this something new, or is this just something that's, yeah?
Yeah, certainly it is a relatively new. It's been it was first used in Calgary, and then has moved to Edmonton, and now other centers are accepting it, primarily because there is some significant differences between bonds used in the construction industry and the type of bond that is being used as development security, with the key factor being the municipality can just demand the bond and the surety company must provide the amount demanded. And so that is different than other bonds. And so that allowance for a municipality allows for it to be very similar to cash or a letter of credit, and provides less risk to a municipality that the surety company would refuse. And so the companies themselves, the surety companies themselves, needed to determine whether that was something that was even possible that they could provide. And there are several companies now that are able to provide that.
Councillor Billington?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Is there any chance that this will reduce the number of bids we get on these jobs? And will it add additional cost to the contractors?
This is primarily geared towards the development industry. And so this would not be something that the city would require for its own construction contracts. It really isn't tailored for that. But certainly it will reduce a developer's costs significantly. And so instead of tying up either cash or their available credit to meet the city's security needs, they pay a surety company an annual fee, which is significantly less than the total security amount. And the surety company provides them the guarantee that the money provides the city the security guarantee that we require to meet our own security requirements. So it's like, instead of a company setting aside money to pay for an actual repair of say an insurance event, say a hailstorm or something like that, they can just buy insurance to cover that. And a surety bond is similar in that respect. So it will save developers a significant amount of money.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, Director Thompson. So yeah, I'm completely in favor of this. So the cost of construction has only dramatically gone up. And again, I know from personal experience that even very modest development projects require substantial cash outlays for security before you move even going. And a letter of credit from the bank really is simply cash on deposit with the bank. So any way you slice it, it's cash out of the developer's pocket. So what this will do is it will allow, I'm not going to suggest that endorsement beating down the development application because of this, but what it does, it just provides that much greater access for smaller companies that want to transition, into larger developments. Companies, it'll allow them access to do that. Previously, some of these things are only open to companies with substantial financial resources. So I'm happy to. I guess I'll move that council endorse the use of surety bonds as an accessible form of development security in the city of Tacoma.
Thank you. So, if I could, Director Thompson, so in a nutshell, any given developer is paying a fee for them to assume the risk. They're ensuring that their work will be performed to the city standards. And in the case of an issue, then we call upon the surety company to access those funds as opposed to directly from the developer. Is that basically the way this works?
That's similar. Yeah. Right now we would have to call on a letter of credit typically. So we'd have to go to the financial institution. And if, again, in the unlikely event that there's an issue and we need to draw on a security, we would go to the financial institution to access the funding required to repair a deficiency, for example. We would go to the surety company instead and demand that money, and the surety company would provide those funds. So it's very similar from a municipality's point of view.
Good. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Maybe this isn't a fair question, but I was curious, what's the worst case scenario? Is there any liability to the city? I know you did check out the legal ramifications, but is there a way that this could fail?
I'd say that a surety company is it's less likely that a financial institution is going to go out of business than a surety company. But it would have to be that a surety company with an excellent credit rating of A- or better would go out of business. And so in the event that that were to happen, then then we would demand that a developer replace their surety bond with another, either a letter of credit or some other form of acceptable security in that moment. And if the developer in that moment doesn't provide that, then they would be in default of their development agreement, and we would have to pursue perhaps legal mechanisms to address issues. And so that would be a very, like, to be an absolute worst case scenario that I can think of. But it would almost be identical to, even if a financial institution were to go out of business, we would require that developer provide security to switch their security, replace that with a different one that is currently active. And so in terms of the differences in risk, they're very, very similar.
So I guess to add to that, the other side of the coin, also the developer would have to be in default almost concurrently. Otherwise, not really owning anything other than some perceived risk until some other form of assurance is met. So it would just be a period of time that we have performance bond or whatever you want to term the overall picture in place. But that in and of itself is really not the end of the world. It would have to be a developer in default, and then they try to access the funds, and the surety company is out of business too. So I mean, it would take quite a storm for that to occur, but it's certainly a possibility. Anyone else? We do have a motion before us by Councillor Jacobson. If there's no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that is unanimous. Thank you for bringing that forward. I think that every little advantage that we can get to attract developers there to the community is a good one, and I appreciate administration bringing that forward for council's consideration. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chief Gotti, it is 25 after. I don't think that we would necessarily have time to complete the snow clearing policy reviews. You're not shortest item, smoke action bylaw. Very good. Not too much over this reason. Council's involved in this, I believe that we'll skip down in consideration of time, we'll skip down to 5.6, the municipal election bylaw 484. Director Piche, that is your item.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council this evening is second and third reading of bylaw 484, the municipal election bylaw. This bylaw provides direction as to how the municipal election will be conducted in October. At the May 10th council meeting, there was a request to bring back information to council on what the difference in costs would be from using tabulators or conducting a manual count. The current budget for the election is $45,000. And so to remove the tabulator budget item would be $10,300, and then to add the people and supplies would be an added $13,000, resulting in an extra $2,700 or approximately $3,000 to the budget. In any other year, a manual count would not be such a concern. However, this coming year has an unusual amount of contests that will require separate ballots. If we were to do a manual count, the total number of ballots that would need to be printed is 66,000 sheets of paper. That is where that extra $4,000 in supplies would be needed. It is strictly printing costs for that. Each contest would require a different color paper ballot. And then this would also mean that each voter would require to take at least 6 different pieces of paper into the voting booth. The explanations to each voter will be much longer than, and with that many pieces of paper, there is a chance that ballots could be missed or lost or even pocketed. A tabulator, they'll only require 2 sheets of paper. As we can combine the ballots for the municipal and the school board trustees votes on one ballot, and then on the second ballot would be the Senate and referendum votes. A tabulator also can reject a ballot if it has not been filled out correctly and provide an opportunity to fix it before the voter leaves the polling station. A manual count will only result in spoiled ballots, as we cannot interpret during the count process what people meant when they make a mistake, such as an overselection of candidates. The second item that was asked to come back to council was a question as if there was, sorry, let me rephrase that. The second item to come back to council was if a question was to be added to the ballot, how and when does that get added? So to add a question to the ballot on behalf of council, council must pass a resolution with the wording that they plan to use. The resolution must be completed prior to nomination day on September 20th, 2021. So that way the ballot can be printed with the way the wording of the question should be. At this time, administration is asking that council passes second and third reading of bylaw 484, the municipal election bylaw. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Director Piche.
Yeah.
Let's see it. Councillor Connick.
I also move that council give second reading municipal election bylaw 44.
Thank you. Director Piche, so in summary, on what I'm going to call a normal municipal election, there would be a $4,000 or $5,000 variance between the electronic machine and manual. However, this year, because of the additional printing required, it's more like a $10,000 or $11,000 differential. Is that close?
No, it really, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
You had suggested that there's about a $10,000 fee for the machine rentals.
Yes.
There's about a $13,000 labor cost.
Yeah.
That would be in place of that, but this year, so there's a difference there, slightly, $3,000 or $4,000. But this year, there's an additional $6,000 in printing, so it's about a $10,000 savings this year, as opposed to manually.
That's correct. Yeah, if on a normal election, if we only had the mayor and council and say school board trustees, there wouldn't be the number of pieces of paper that would be required to be printed at that time, and we wouldn't have to have a lot more people to be coming in to do the counts. If that was the case. But this year, because of the Senate and the referendum questions, and then if council pursues going with the plebiscite or not, that adds up another number of questions. Again, the referendum questions, there could be from 4 to 8 questions that the province may ask, and that does add up quite a bit.
Thank you. Given I was one that kind of brought it up for that, it's nice to have our numbers as to the difference between it. For a year like this, I don't know that the $10,000 extra can hardly be justified, although future years, if it's only $3,000 or $4,000, I would much prefer to put local people to work as opposed to renting machines from out of province personally. However, this year that doesn't appear to be the case. So does anybody need the motion read back to them? We're okay with it as it stands, as put forward by Councillor Connick. All those in favor? See none opposed, that's unanimous as well. We're nearly on time, I believe, if I can get my trusty clock here. 5:32.
Sorry, Mayor Creasy. There was the motion for second reading and a motion for third reading that would be needed.
I do not believe that we had anybody put forward a third reading. Councillor Hoekstra.
I move that council gives third reading to municipal election bylaw 484.
Very good. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you for the reminder. That is unanimous as well in favor. For a public hearing this evening, item 4.1, the land use bylaw 400.35 amendment for site-specific use and facility fitness. I believe that we've got planner Mr. Teal by as well, and he will come speak to you shortly. However, according to the MGA, I have to go through a few items prior. And as mayor, I declare that the statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.35 now open, and that this hearing is held pursuant to sections 7, 8, 230, 692, and 606, section 2C of the MGA RSA 2000, chapter M26, and I hereby request the legislative coordinator to confirm the purpose of this public hearing, that the statutory public hearing notice was advertised, and that any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are read into the record. Coordinator Belmo.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow the general public to provide input and express their views of land use bylaw 400.35, given first reading May 10th, 2021. Bylaw 400.35 proposes to allow fitness facility on the west part of Lot 30, Plan RN9, as a discretionary use on the west part of the Lot 30, Plan RN9. The subject site is located at 5346 50th Avenue and is shown in the map as illustrated. Public hearing notice was advertised as shown on page 3 of the agenda on our city website per the advertising bylaw, and also advertised in the Lacombe Express on June 3rd and on June 10th. Mayor Creasy and Council, 6 written submissions were received and 8 registrants from the public are in attendance, remote and in person, to speak. I will now read the letters for the record. Attention Mayor Grant Creasy and Lacombe City Council. As owner of Sims Insurance and primary insurance broker for Dancer's Edge Studio, I would like to contribute my opinion on the proposed rezoning of 5346 50th Avenue to become a dance studio. In the last 18 years, I have watched grow her business from a single room studio to what is now with 3 locations and 8 studios. Over that time, there has not been a single insurance claim for the business. The new location would be a perfect location for her dance studio, providing a safe, convenient location for her families in the heart of our city. We support the rezoning of this building to become the forever home of Dancer Edge, and would hope City Council would vote the same way. Sincerely, D.L. Thompson, President of Sims and Associate Insurance. Letter 2. My husband, this is from, Lynn Gustum. My husband and I will not be here when the public hearing takes place. We are opposed to the use of this building for a fitness center. Parking will be an issue. Our alley is already too busy with people making it a shortcut to get to the Rexall drugstore. They drive so fast down the alley that it is an issue trying to pull out of our backyard. They mostly go too fast when going east to west, and my best guess is 30 to 40. I tried to see if there was some kind of pattern, but I cannot identify one. The faster traffic seems to be between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. Please consider the situation for all concerned. Thank you, Lynn and Bob Gustum. Dear committee, my comments are really not against the change of the RI residential, but safety is the back lane. When the school was there, just the teachers parked in the back. That over time, the fourplex was built on the north side of the lane, numbers 5023. This back lane has become very busy. Also some speeding, possibly just used a shortcut parallel to 50th Avenue. The increased use was gradual over the years, in my opinion, not simply because of the 30K speed limit. I'm sure a dance studio has young children. What about parking? The outreach school was totally different dynamics concerning time, closed after school hours, capacity, approximately 400 student enrollment, but most students did not attend in regiment patterns, only when they needed to, so to speak. Parking, seldom a problem on 50th Avenue. Back parking lot, mostly teachers' vehicles. The lane is only a single lane. Passing vehicles can be very tight. Passing in many locations requires driving on private property. Making the lane one way would not solve the problem, and many of us have to back out onto the lane, and there are few obstructions already, making it potentially dangerous. Sincerely, Chuck Coulson. We support the proposed changes to allow fitness facility on the west part of Lot 30, Plan RN9. Barb and Glenn Walker. Good morning. I would like to express our concerns in regards to changing the bylaw to permit the use of the property at 5346 50th Avenue for a fitness facility. We are not opposed to building being used for these activities. However, we have very legitimate safety and access concerns as it appears the back alley would be utilized for parking and drop-off. This alley already is incredibly busy due to apartments, drugstore, seniors drop-in center, Lacombe Memorial Center, library, seniors condo unit. We struggle weekly to get out of our alley, having to on occasion back out of the alley to allow a safe place to pass. A one-way access is not a solution, as local residents need access to travel both ways to accommodate access to garages and parking trailers. In the past, only staff for the outreach school were allowed access to the parking area. If this were the case for the new business, I think that this maybe could be a way of limiting traffic down a very busy alley. Parking then may become an issue with the street becoming the primary parking area. Would there be room for a driveway beside the building to access parking lot from the front street? Then a fence in the alley could be built eliminating this issue. Regards, John and Sandy Ubel. To whom it may concern, we are residents at Lacombe. Our backyard and garage are directly located on the alleyway with this proposed property. We are greatly concerned with the possibility of having a fitness center on this property. Currently, the traffic volume is high due to Rexall Pharmacy customers using this as an alternative route to the store. The speeds in which these drivers go puts residents using this alley at risk. We are also concerned about the noise levels in the evening that having a business such as this will create. Please reconsider this amendment. Sincerely, Corey and Kristen Pittman. That is the last of the 6 letters.
Thank you, Coordinator Belbono. Appreciate that. I would remind that all persons giving oral presentations this evening are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief to the point. The order for this statutory public hearing presentation will be our development officer. I believe this time it is Leonard Teal. Very good. Then there will be followed by those in favor, those opposed, and any person affected to which is to be heard. We also have a gentleman that joined us here in person as well. Mr. Polson. Yes. Thank you. They will certainly have an opportunity to speak as well. First off, though, our designated officer, Planner Teal, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Creasy. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
And I'm going to try sharing my screen so you can see some of the graphics that we'll be speaking to as we go. So this should be up on the screen, should be the air photo highlighting the site. That's found in page 5 of your agenda package. The proposal for bylaw 400.35, if approved, would allow for a dance studio of approximately 300 students capacity at the site that you can see highlighted in pink. The issue that in terms of evaluating the fit of this particular use with the property surrounds and the available parking space has been trying to determine how many of those 300 students may be coming and going at any given point in time. I won't go over all the detailed material that's in the RFD, Your Worship, or sorry, Mayor Creasy. I'll try to give you a brief overview of some of the challenges that we've been trying to look at in assessing the particular application. Certainly, we have heard the concerns around the amount of parking, the possible impact on 50th Avenue in terms of parking along that and traffic, and certainly the concerns that would impact on the lane if traffic volumes were put down the back lane behind the property to access the rear parking area. The challenge with this is that the 300 students would not necessarily all be there at once. They would come and go in a series of waves over the course of the peak period of the proposed operation, which is basically Monday through Thursday, starting around 4 o'clock, extending till about 9:30 in the evening. And the applicant has provided us a great picture she possibly can paint about the nature of the activity that will be taking place. In the materials that is attached to the RFD, we've tried to relate how many vehicles may be coming and going at any given point in time, trying to deal with that particular issue. And we've had to rely on a series of sources and information, and COVID certainly has made this somewhat of a challenge to get a handle on what the nature of the impact would be and how that would relate to available space. Our best analysis so far is based on information from the applicant, information from other tenants based on where the applicant is currently located when they thinking back on what things were like prior to COVID, and also have some additional information to share with council related to a one-night observation about the operation of the current at the current location over in the industrial park. The applicant has indicated that when you look at the pattern of comings and goings, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 vehicles would accumulate and be parked on site or doing a loading or a pickup of passengers over the course of a cycle as classes begin, end, and cycle through the evening. That certainly has corresponded with the information that we've had from other businesses near or the tenant's current operation. Two of them were good enough to provide some information to administration about the anticipated amount of parking that they've observed over the years. And they also have given estimates in that 10 to 20 vehicles parked or dropping off or seem to be associated with the dance studio at any point in time. The information we managed to collect directly ourselves is hopefully coming up on the screen now. To corroborate some of that information from the applicant and the other businesses. It consists of 2 hours of observation. We had a brief window last week where COVID restrictions allowed for operation, and we were able to observe for about a 2-hour period the actual operation to see what would it look like in terms of the comings and goings and how much peak traffic would achieve. And without going through all the steps in the table, you can see that we were looking at the information in 15-minute blocks, looking at the comings and goings of vehicles. And the important one is the column over here that you can see of accumulated vehicles in the parking lot at any given time. And as vehicles came and went and picked up passengers, gradually that grew up to approximately 14 to 16 vehicles as the peak during that 2-hour observation period that was on site. The operator tells us that may represent maybe 75% operation, working within COVID restrictions. So if we were to gross that number up, we're into that 22-ish vehicles accumulated on site or involved in loading and unloading at any single point in time during that 2 hours of observation. So our best guess, Mayor Creasy and members of council at this point, is when we look at the size of the facility and the nature of the operation and how many students may ultimately be involved in their comings and goings, we could be looking at a need to accommodate anywhere from 20 to 25 vehicles at any given hour during that Monday to Thursday peak of operation. When we change our attention back to what's available on 50th and in the immediate surround, sorry if I just changed materials. I'm flying away, sorry. When we look at the available supply of parking in the vicinity to accommodate that, that's where you get the graphic that's also attached to the RFD. The subject site is in the hatched orange. On the site itself, there's enough space in that north part in the yard back here to create a parking lot of around 22 to 24 parking stalls, which corresponds with the amount of parking that the 10,000 square foot fitness facility would be expected to provide on site. Certainly that would be accessed off the lane, which we've heard some concerns around. And then on 50th Avenue, in terms of the blocks between C&E Trail to the west and 53rd Street to the east, and then down 54th Street, we try to do an inventory of how many available on-street parking stalls there may be for people that are staying for a couple classes or doing the drop-off and pick-up cycle. Along 50th Avenue, that green area that you're looking at, when we consider the restrictions on parking areas and size of vehicles, there's approximately 50 parking stalls on that stretch. On the north-south segment of 54th Street, within walking distance, there's approximately another 13. So an overall supply of around 63 right now. In the long-term plans of the Transportation Master Plan, which is currently being updated, the parking on 50th Avenue may be impacted by the creation of dedicated right turn and left turn bays at either ends of the segment that we're looking at C&E Trail and 53rd Street. And that may reduce the supply of available parking spaces on 50th Avenue from that 50 down to the 40 mark. Also, the other issue to take into account is while that number sounds good and positive to be able to accommodate the anticipated number of vehicles based on what information we've been able to provide, there's still the question of how much would be available for others to share that shared resource of on-street parking for other commercial uses that may be in the area or residents that wish to have visitors stop in on a Monday to Thursday evening timeframe. So certainly, Your Worship, we have, Mayor Creasy, we have heard that issue about parking. We've certainly heard the issue about putting traffic down the lane, and even that 30 or 20 to 30 vehicles doing a drop off down the lane in the back would probably be more problematic than using 50th Avenue itself, given the nature of how lanes are built, and they're expected to deal with low volumes of traffic and generally speaking have very narrow travel or carriageways to begin with. Administration has also heard some concerns about noise emanating from the possible proposed use if it was approved, largely music related to the dance activity itself. The observation that we had at the current studio did have a chance to observe whether or not there was any noise evident from outside the building, and none was observed. At the same time, treating this as a proposed discretionary use does allow for acoustic installation if so necessary, if council was to approve the use, and that's something the Development Authority could then put in place if necessary to deal with that potential impact. From administration's perspective, the uncertainty about the amount of vehicles and what may actually happen based on compared to the information we're able to collect is one of the reasons why we're recommending that council postpones third reading of the bylaw to enable administration to bring forward some suggested amendments that may put in place a monitoring program or some conditions to mitigate or monitor first, and then if necessary, mitigate some of the potential traffic impacts. That is found at the very tail end on page 6 of the RFD. So not having a grand certainty about the actual parking impact and traffic volume, administration puts off or suggests putting off the third reading to basically put in place a monitoring and tracking program and bring the matter back to council, say over after a 2 to 3 year period, to observe what actually happens, give the operator of the facility a chance to respond to some of the concerns, and if necessary, after that 2 to 3 year period, either go ahead with more restrictions to manage it, or make a determination that the use cannot meet the expectations and therefore has to cease. Your worship, or Mayor Creasy, would be happy to field any questions about the assessment or the proposed approach.
Appreciate that, Leonard Teal. One item for clarification there, you had suggested there's in the neighborhood of 24 parking stalls at the rear of the property. And I was just curious, the laneway that accesses that parking area, is it hard surfaced or gravel?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So there is space in the back to create up to that 24 parking stalls. Right now, the parking area itself is gravel and it's not defined. So with pavement, curb and gutter painting, you'd be able to get more parking out of that area. Not all of the lane that would be used to access the rear is paved. The ends, one towards Rexall and the west towards CNE Trail, does have asphalt, but through the middle, it does come change over to gravel.
Thank you. Councilor Hutro.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I was curious about your proposal on page 6 that you initial approval will be for 2 to 3 years. But correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they proposing to buy this building to have this business there? And then we would, after 2 years, say they couldn't be there? They're not renting the building, is that correct?
Mayor Creasy, I'm afraid in terms of the current status between the current landowner and the new landowner, I can't speak to a high degree of certainty. I'm not sure which answer it is. That may be best to put to the applicant if she chooses to speak shortly.
Thank you, Leonard Teal. I guess further to that, the first part of the question, perhaps explain the 2 or 3 year approval. What was the reasoning with that? That seems a little unusual. What was the reasoning for that?
Certainly, Mayor Creasy. So first up was to give enough time for observations to occur and get past COVID. So in hopes of getting to what would be considered a normal level of operation. And then balancing it between enough time to observe the patterns, and also if it's not going particularly well, limiting the amount of time that others, the neighbors and residents in the area may have to go through that process. That's not to say during that 2 to 3 year period that there wouldn't be parameters on things to be managed and to be avoided. For example, excessive volumes of traffic down the lane, that could be incorporated. But trying to give a chance for the business to operate and demonstrate if they can address the parking and drop-off issues, and then balancing again that with kind of a short pilot project or monitoring for the sake of the residents in the area.
Thank you. Councilor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I see in the one diagram that it shows a no parking zone out in front of the school. That could change to a loading zone.
Fortunately, Mayor Creasy, I picked the one that has it highlighted in pink, but I believe that pretty much the full frontage of the property is already with painted curb and is specifically no parking near that crosswalk across the frontage. I'm not sure if I missed the first part of the question.
Well, I'm just wondering if that would be changed to a loading zone.
Mayor Creasy, that's certainly probably something that could be looked at. Probably the other consideration would have to be driver visibility as you approach the crosswalk, and make sure that there's someone standing to cross the vehicles going, especially westward on 50th Avenue, have a chance to observe that there's a pedestrian there.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Connick.
In response to Councilor Gullickson's comment, that's yellow because left turning vehicles are 54th. That probably wouldn't work if vehicles were parked there. Is that safe to say or no? I'm just thinking if someone parks there and they move and someone turning left to the 54th. I'm just trying to figure out why that would be a no parking zone. There's got to be a good reason.
Leonard Hill, I'm just going to give Chief Gowdy an opportunity to speak first.
So I'm sure the no parking zones are set there in relation to the classrooms. There's that back.
Anyone else? Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Is there not something in bylaw, for example, isn't it very unusual for a business, public parking to be in the rear of the building? Not only that, but access of a back lane of residential area that is really, for the most part, never used by the existing residents. And I just, you know, it was a church at one time that was used for 1 day a week in a specific time period that was, you know, not as disruptive. A church that was built in a residential area. And now we're put in this position that the owner has come to council after or rezoning after purchasing the building. And it's really, you know, the feedback, in my opinion, you would put an offer to purchase on a building subject to your rezoning. And now council's put in a position of, yeah, very difficult position. So I'm very uncomfortable about this proposal when we've got several residents that are going to be affected, that there's a business in the middle of a residential area, that the parking is in the back of the area and the back lane access. So it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Fair enough comments. Councilor Ross, however, we will have opportunity to discuss this matter further, given that we're in a public hearing. Basically, we just keep this portion to clarification of existing presentations that we appreciate it. Councilor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just a question for Planner Teal. One comment from the public in at least the submissions we've received and heard so far is that a one-way access down the lane would not be practical. Could you elaborate that on that point from your perspective?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Creasy, through you to Councillor Hibbs. I'm trying to remember whether or not I actually asked or how that idea of one-way came up. Certainly, if there was a direction of flow or travel, that is one way that could be looked at to mitigate the traffic. I'm not, certainly it's not part of the proposal for the amendments to bylaw 400 to address this. I'm not sure if that's looking ahead in anticipation of how we resolve it or not.
So just to be clear, from your perspective, that is a possibility. You're not aware of something at this moment in time that precludes that from being a possible effective way of addressing the situation.
Yeah, I don't, Mayor Creasy, I don't think the one-way direction would really make the big difference. At the end of the day, if all this parent drop-off, even the 20 to 30 vehicles, say over the course of an hour, had to go down the back lane, I think whether or not it's one-way westbound or one-way eastbound or still two-way, you're still going to encounter a volume issue. I think in some ways the one-way risk is just more inconvenience for all the surrounding residents of the area and not really resolving the traffic volume issue.
Thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to add to your opening remarks, Planner Teal?
No, Your Worship. Happy to field further questions after the other presentations.
Very good, thank you. We will now move into those in favor. And I do have a list of individuals that had registered. So looking at that, perhaps I could start not being able to see the names to see if in fact they are with us electronically. Pastor Mark Running from the Pentecostal Church, are you able to hear us?
Pastor Mark is currently on vacation right now, so this is Brian Darnell speaking. I'm his associate pastor.
Very good. The floor is yours.
Was there any questions that you guys perhaps had towards us, or was, because we are definitely in favor of the dance studio, but if there's any other questions that you were having towards us, that is welcomed at this point, I guess.
I don't think that there will be any questions. The questions basically would be from a presentation. You just said that you were listed as being in favor here. Was there any other comments that you wanted to give in that regard?
Not much at this time. There is a previous board member from our church here as well. He would probably know more about the situation than I would.
Very good, given that, and he's with you now?
He's on his own user.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any questions? Next up then, Dr. Tim Darnell, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Very good, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have been, so as you may or may not know, Lacombe Pentecostal Church has owned this property and continues to own this property for well over 25 years. I have been an attender and member of this church for almost 26 years and attended church when this was a church use building. We outgrew this facility in approximately 2001. And I was on the church board at that time when we found and acquired the building where we currently are, just west of the city. At that point in time, we tried to sell this property back in about 2001, but we were unable to sell at that point in time. There was no buyers that were looking for a property in a building such as this. And that's when we were approached by the school board, and the school board wanted to use it as the outreach school. And for the last 18 years, it has been used as an outreach school, and it has been a very good use of this building. With changes in the provincial budget and schooling funding, the school board has taken away their lease with us, us being Lacombe Pentecostal Church. And therefore, since for the last year, this building has been almost the last year, this building has been unused, and we are looking for either a new tenant or a buyer for this building. And that's when we came across Dancer's Edge. And they seem to be a very good fit for the use of this building. This building is, being an old church, is very specific. It'd be difficult to use for any other kind of business. It wouldn't be useful as a residence in its current form. And so I believe that this business, this dance studio, this fitness business would be a very good use of the building and of the facility. It does have good parking access. When we attended the church, we often parked in the back. The counselor that mentioned that, this used to be a church just used one day a week was incorrect in his assumptions. Even when we were using it as a church, which was up until about 2001, we actually had multiple uses during the week. The building was used quite a bit. Various meetings in the evenings and during the day were being done. So it wasn't used just once a week then. We did have good relationships with the neighbors, and I believe still continue to do so. From the city's perspective, this building for the last 25 plus years has actually achieved no tax income from this being a church facility and then used as a nonprofit. From this city's perspective, it would be actually a good use of this building for this business to come into place, because then you could actually start achieving tax revenue from this property, which you have not had for 25 plus years. There are other businesses just located right across the street. There is a business. So I don't think, and Rexall being just down the street, I don't think it's unreasonable to rezone this for this purpose. I do sympathize with the residents who are having trouble with traffic, but that traffic is already going on and seems to be more related to the Rexall being there than anything else. Yes, I understand there will be some increased traffic, but I don't think that's going to be a major problem. At least I sure hope not. And I know that Heather is a good business owner, and she will ask her students and parents to do their best to help respect the residents that are currently there. So with all of that, I was on the board up until just recently when I have had to take a time off from the board as per our church board guidelines. But I know that our church is in favor of it, and I personally believe that this would be a very good use of this building. Thank you.
Thank you. The previous speaker suggested there was someone else that wishes to speak in favor of this. That was you?
That's me. As being a former board member and a longtime attender of the church. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much. I thought there was an additional individual, so thank you for that. And next up, I understand that Heather Bulow, who is the owner of Dancers Edge, wishes to speak as to be expected in favor. Heather, are you able to hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Very well. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and to all council members. Yes, I'm Heather Bulow, and I am the owner of Dancers Edge Studio, and I have been for 19 years. We've been in Lacombe for 10 years, and in that time we have, like a non-COVID year, we usually run about 600 students. And in Lacombe we have about 325, and 100 of them are under the age of 6, if you can believe it. So it's our booming community coming to our dance studio, and we love it. When they're not in preschool, they either take recreational classes or competitive classes. And our competitive dancers compete all around the world and travel all around the world in all of Alberta. And we represent Lacombe. And we wear Lacombe on our sleeves, and we're very, very community organized. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm a little nervous tonight, so just excuse me. But so community is everything for us, and that is why moving to a location that is in the heart of Lacombe means everything to me. We do everything from parades to opening ceremonies, and anything that the city asks us to do, we're there for you guys. Our current location, like was mentioned, is in the industrial area in Wolf Creek Drive. I had to go through the same kind of city council because people didn't want me out there, and it had to be rezoned for me to be able to be in the industrial. We have not grown out of our facility there, and it is an absolute beautiful facility. The reason why we're moving is because of a high rent increase again this summer. It is now not feasible for us to stay in that location. So we are basically being forced out of our beautiful facility that had 4 studios in it. During a COVID year, that's very, very hard, but everything happens for a reason. And along came Mark and the Pentecostal Church. They heard that I was going to be homeless and was looking for a home, and they reached out to me. Mark said, just come see our location. And I did. And the moment I walked in, I knew in my heart that that was our new home, and it could be our forever home. I got to speak in front of their counselor team, their members, and they proposed to me a rent to own situation. Does that even happen in 2021? No, it really doesn't. It's them going out of their heart, knowing that what we do for the community, and they want Dancers Edge to be a part of the community for many years longer. And so I said, yes, and please let's work together. So to answer the other counselor's question about, do I own this? Am I buying it? We haven't signed our lease contract yet, but what it is proposed is I lease for 2 years. After 2 years, I start making payments for down payment, and in 5 years, I have first option to buy the building. What's going to happen in the meantime is as soon as I get okay from council is I spend approximately $200,000 renovating this old but beautiful building into something that works for a dance studio. Breathe, Heather, breathe. When I walked in there, I was dreaming of for Dancer's Edge and also for what it could be for our community. I have big plans for this building that brings Lacombe together. Preschool style programs, our already established dance studio, fitness studio. We're building a yoga studio in it. I plan on bringing the very first Cirque studio in Alberta, in all of Alberta, to Lacombe, Alberta. That would be huge. It would be huge, and I'm excited. So many things that we can do in this building because it is huge and perfect size and room for us to grow. What is also exciting is that kids can walk here from school. When we went into our location we are now, we promised town council that we would not allow children to walk or ride their bikes to the studio because it has to pass 2 uncontrolled railway stops. And so they don't bike, they don't walk. But now, being in the heart of Lacombe, hopefully, they can walk, they can ride their bikes from their houses, and moms and dads can drop their kids off and go uptown for coffee. That hasn't been able to happen before, and I think we'll see that happening a lot. I know that, I also wanted to point that I did forward a letter from our MLA, Ron Orr, that it didn't get read tonight, but he also was in favor of us with this building. So if that could maybe be forwarded to you guys. I have worked closely with Ron, I've worked closely with Ron through COVID, and he has been an advocate for my dance studio and fighting for us as we've been closed 9 of the last 16 months. So just to address some of the concerns, and I definitely understand, first off, sound. So we are going to have 5 to 6 studios within the building itself. And if I didn't do soundproofing rooms, you couldn't have a ballet class and a tap class happening at the same time. That wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to hear your ballet instructor tell you what to do. We plan the building accordingly. Tap is downstairs. Walls are insulated with this insulation. Our sprung floors have insulation in it to grab the sound and absorb it. If something is not going right, there's also these soundproof, I'm not sounding technical, but they go on the wall and they grab the sound too. Really, no sound should be leaving our building, or even more, leaving a room to the next one, or else we wouldn't be able to function. So I can reassure you that there will not be a sound issue from the music inside coming out. Another issue is that having a dance studio in residential area. I first want to just make it aware that the other 2, there's 3 dance studios in Lacombe, and the other 2 dance studios are also located in residential areas, and the other one is just north of where we're proposing to go. It's hard for a dance studio. I don't know where you want us to go. You don't want us in industrial. It's hard for us to go into commercial, and it's hard to go into residential. So that's why I kind of think this area right here is kind of the best of both worlds. It's a little bit in our commercial area and right into some residential as well. The biggest issue is parking. So like Craig said, there's 22 to 25 parking stalls in the back. When I heard that, when I was first looking at this, I was seriously partying, because I was like, what are we going to do with all these parking? In Black Falls, we have 8 stalls and stalls in the back for my teachers to park in, and they all do. Black Falls has 9 stalls, and in Lacombe, we have 6 designated stalls at our Lacombe studio, and then teachers park in the back. So we are running with 9 stalls at one studio and 6 stalls in the other without making our neighboring businesses angry at us. We don't have any complaints that I have come back to me or to town that I know of. And it works. It's very much a drop-off system, a carpooling system. Craig never seen any carpooling this year because you can't carpool because of COVID. That is really normal. It's usually a dance mom or dance dad picking up probably 3 or 4 kids, and they usually come piling out. And it's also high school kids all piling into one vehicle and there. We have a lot of dancers from Black Falls that go to high school, and then they finish the program in Lacombe because the Lacombe Studios has our graduating program there. And so they get to high school, they all come from one car, and then they go over to the dance studio. So it's a really, there's not really, well, you've seen the statistics there of what, when he was sitting there. It's pretty true to how it is run. The traffic in the back alley, we plan, what I was proposing and what I was planning was to tell my parents that the front along 50th Ave is for drop and go. So either using that or the 54th side street to drop them there and go across the crosswalk into the front entrance. And so all drop and go would be out in the front, none along the back. In the back would be probably your teenagers that are staying all night, or if a mom comes in. Right now, we're not using our lobby. They can't come into our lobby because of COVID. We're kind of liking that. So we're definitely going to encourage drop and go more, or so that the parents aren't kind of congregating in the lobby. We also said that if it wasn't enough for our staff to park there, that our staff could park along the 54th Street, which Craig had showed you. There's, I think, only one driveway that goes there. It's more, there's quite a bit of parking along that side. And, you know, even if you said to us, you need to park further down, I'm sure my staff would walk. We are very accommodating and just would love to be in this building. One last thing, I talk fast, I hope everyone is okay. I would like to address Craig's recommendation for the third reading and additional approval option with 2 to 3 years waiting on approval. I do have a little bit of issue on this. I have 2 concerns. My first concern is that this is going to delay this process at least another 3 to 4 weeks, I would believe, until I can get a building permit. I, as of July 1st, am homeless as a dance studio. So all of my summer camps and my revenue that I usually bring in is not going to happen. My goal was to have the building ready to go by the last week in August, so I can run 1 camp, and then we start the season when school starts in September. So doing this additional delay would not let me in there till probably middle of July to start renovations. And with trades the way they are, we know that that would be impossible, and I probably wouldn't get in till October, November. And then even then, I don't know what plan B for that option is. The other thing is, my other concern about doing that is a couple months ago, someone from the city came to me and offered me to buy the regional library. And I walked through that, and I worked with Guy, and we came up with a proposal to take to City Council, which I'm sure you remember. And again, it was a perfect building because it was big and open for me. It was close to the schools. And I was like, yeah, going to do this. And came back from City Council that yes, I could buy the building, but I couldn't have the land it sat on. As a business owner, that wouldn't probably be the smartest decision, to buy a building and not own the land, because the city could turn around in 2 years and say, we need it to expand the arena. So I'm sorry, you have to leave. My renovations, what I have planned for the Pentecostal church is about $200,000 to make it dance studio ready, to beautify up this building, put in my sprung floors, put in my mirrors, my bars, all things that I can't take with me, that they're pretty permanent. So to do this on a trial and then 3 years later have the option of it being ripped out from under me, I don't know if I could agree to that, because that is just too risky. I would propose, I don't even know if this is a thing, but if we wanted to do a yearly check-in, I don't ever want to have neighbors that hate me. I am a lover of all things. So I don't want to have people upset with me. So if we could do maybe a yearly check-in with the city and be like, you know, there's still an issue with too many vehicles coming in the back, and then I can come up with a resolution. We can say, you know, let's check in with her every year for 4 years, and but not with it to be able to be ripped away from me. I would just maybe like to talk about that. I mean, if that's the only way I can get into this building, of course, I'll have to make a decision on that, but those are my two concerns there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pillow. I don't think anyone can deny your passion for your business and our community, so thank you for that. I will make a couple of comments. You had suggested that, you had said that I don't know if you meant the people of Lacombe or city council specifically, do not want your studio either in the industrial area or in its current location. And I would suggest that's a little unfair. This is part of the process that everyone has to go through when they choose to develop in an area that falls outside of the parameters that are applicable to everyone. And it's up to council to determine merits, all the merits, and see if it's suitable for our community. So we will certainly do that in this instance, as we do in lots of others. One item I want a clarification on, you had said that you had anticipated the front door to be probably used as an entrance for I think you termed it drop and go usage. And I was just curious, would you have any kind of an idea what portion of your clientele that would represent?
That wouldn't stick around for the night. Probably at least 70%.
Okay, so it's substantial. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Councilor Ross?
Just a clarification, Mr. Understood that. So 70% is drop and go or 70% stay?
No, yeah, drop and go. Yeah, more drop and go.
Thank you.
Because the kids are dancing like the younger kids 2 hours, the older kids about 4 hours a night. So like the parents don't want to sit there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Goldson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. They can't sit there anyway, is that not correct?
Just because of COVID.
No, but they couldn't before anyway, like you couldn't sit there and watch your children dance. You were in that little lobby area that you have there. So you weren't watching the kids dance, because I've to your studio a number of times, as you know, and it's not, I'd say more like 90% drop and go. I mean, there was very few people sitting in that lobby.
Mm-hmm. The number where it gets, where I get the 30% is anyone that's under the age of 6, their moms tend to stick around, but they're mostly in the daytime when no other dancers are there. So it's less crowded then, like you're only having about 12 3-year-olds there. So that's 12 moms there, but yeah, that's where the 30% is coming.
Thank you. Councilor Jacobson?
You said Lacombe, it's 325 students right now, is that correct? With this building, how large of a student base did you see it growing to before you opened it?
That's good. COVID has me down about 200 kids. So I am hoping to build that up in the next couple of years. And then, yeah, I mean, in my head, the possibilities are endless. It's a beautiful facility that I could get more in, but scheduling wise too, we're already running 4 schedules for 4 studios full time. So it would bring in new things like fine arts for preschool age children, which is something new. So it'll be similar to a preschool happening in the day, maybe some Saturday classes that don't happen now. So we can definitely make room to accommodate.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Could you just remind us again how many hours of the day will your studio be open? Because I guess weirdly I was led to believe it was 4 till 9, but you're mentioning daytime programming quite a bit here.
Yeah, so Tuesdays and Wednesdays, okay, so sorry. So in Lacombe, Monday and Wednesday will be our fine arts program from 9 till noon. Again, this is going to be a drop off. It's very similar to a preschool where we can only have 16 children in there and 2 instructors. So that happens Monday, Wednesday, and then Tuesday, Thursday is our preschool dance classes, which run from 10 to 11:30. And then the majority of our dancers come in the evening between 4:15 and the last class is ends at 9:30.
Perhaps a contribution there from Leonard Teal is the hours from 4 till 9 for peak. I see a hand up there. What else? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of bylaw 400.35? Thank you all for your presentations then. We will move on to those opposed. And as I suggested earlier, we do have an individual who wishes to speak and join us here in person. And so I would extend an opportunity to Mr. Charles Coulson. The floor is yours.
Why am the only one?
Now that I'm not sure of. You're certainly the only one that's here in person that is going to speak.
I don't. But am I the only one opposed?
I would have to ask our coordinator if we have any other individuals who wish to speak that are opposed to this. Or members.
Mayor Creasy, I believe we have another registrant on the video calls machine. Susie Boyd.
Thank you very much. So to answer your question, no, there is another person as well.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me listen. I'd like to thank the people that have already spoken. My name is Chuck Charles Coulson. I live at 5414 50th Avenue, north side, same side as the outreach school was, just a couple of doors down. To the west. I've lived there since 1989, over 30 years. So I've seen the progress of traffic. From a business point of view, I would be as excited as the young lady that owns the business or that wants to start it. The school is an ideal building for dance studio, karate, anything like that, because of the structure of the openness. It would be relatively inexpensive. So we certainly understand how she's thinking. I was running the dance studio, karate thing. It would be something to definitely look at. I also appreciate the comments of Pentecostal Church folk. It wasn't as busy during those times because the difference in usage. My main concern is safety. Right, what I observed over time, the problem did not start with the 30 click speed limit on the front on 50th Avenue. I wondered that myself. I think 30 clicks is good for business because the slower people go, they gawk and they might stop by. So it was gradual over time. There was an increase when the drugstore went in, but it seems to be the increase in the traffic, maybe a shortcut in the way people are driving. If I could give you some illustrations, the lane is about the distance between these two desks. That's about it. And you have some houses in the fourplex to the north. If you can imagine, the driveways are only 3 feet long. The driveways are only 3 feet long, and they have to back out beside a building that's totally blind. And I'm somewhat in a similar situation. For the last year, I have to back out. I'm one of the ones that I have no access to the front, same as the school. But I backed out over here with my hazard lights flashing. I stopped at the end of my driveway, and many a times, oh, thank God I stopped, because somebody is zipping by. When I notice parents with children right now, because some of the residents on the street have children, they accompany their children on the back alley. And they ride those little trikes and those wagons, and the parents accompany them right now. We're very aware of the hazard. It's the safety is my concern. I understand the tax revenue, I understand it's a good place for this kind of business. But when in this lane, many parts in the lane, you have to find a place to be able to pull off if you meet oncoming traffic, let alone a pedestrian. When pedestrians, I mean, the almost come to a stop because there's hedges, there's buildings, there's even to get the car off, you have to drive on somebody's private property because there's no room. And I'm glad that our instructor has, and correct me if I remember wrong, but over 100 children that are very, very young. My concern is the children, teenagers, skateboarding, riding bikes, whatever it might be. When I came home to get changed to come to this meeting, I was blocked by a motorhome because some of the residents have motorhomes and they have to back them in. So I just watched the motorhome. It's just the residents. I'm not complaining against the residents. I'm trying to describe the situation. I love living there. I love living in Macomb. I'm a happy old fogey. Whichever way you vote, it's up to you, not up to me. I'm fine. But I'm just trying to say it's confined. The crosswalk has already been mentioned, was why it has no parking in front of the school. I don't know how that will affect people parking when they have company. It may or may not. I appreciated the lady's ideas of trying to park on 54th Street and other streets. But there is one business right across there in the corner, and who's parking for activities. The one-way idea, I may have been the one that suggested it, not Mr. Teal. I wrote it in the correspondence. The reason one way will not assist is because then that means even the local residents, it's going to increase their use of that back lane because they have to drive from one end to the other instead of just going into the closed stand. And so it really, it's 1.5 dozen together. I thought of stuff, maybe it would help. I don't think so. I've been in the school, I know it's a good dance studio. I appreciate the dear lady's business acumen. By the sounds of it, she can increase that business, and when it increases the number of people using it. The other thing is the time at night. The church was open sometimes late at night, but I go to the church too. It's different hours. It's a different thing. And it's also different. That's probably the biggest thing. The drugstore has probably increased the traffic. I don't think it's their fault. I think it's just drivers in a hurry. Safety. some of the residents even are safely in the lane, and I observe that now, and that's new. It's temporary, what do you know? And it's the congestion. If you could picture the size, if you go on, they're different than I've been in many back lanes in Macomb, we've had these lanes, they're a great idea. Whether in residential areas, but because you have apartment buildings in this area, you have the drugstore, it's already getting congested. And trying to move the people, the children, the students, there's a difference between how the outreach tool work, if my observation. The outreach tool, when Mrs. Mangan was there, I was in there a few times. They had about 400 people, I understand, as students. But many of those students didn't drive in. They didn't. Now, I don't know why. And parking was never a problem. You could tell by walking down the lane, most of the parking was in teachers, because you see the cars repeated in the same cars. I don't know why that is. And I know the students, by the nature of the students, they're very independent people. They always didn't come to class on a routine basis. They just basically happen. But business, whatever is a business, you have to do it regularly. And it's going to be good. So those are just a couple of observations. If there's any questions that I could try and answer them. I've lived here for over 30 years. I can see the writing on the wall. It's not this business's fault. It's just simply use the laneway.
Thank you.
Safety is concerned. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Paulson? Appreciate your observations and your input. Thank you. I understand that we have one other individual, and I'm sorry, but I cannot see the postage size stamp name. Okay. And so,
Mayor Creasy, it is Susie Berg.
Berg. Very good. Susie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor Creasy and council and members here with your input, thank you so much for the opportunity. I wholeheartedly support local business, especially in Lacombe. And my husband and I have lived in this property at 5351 51st Ave, which if you have your map in front of you, would be the very northwest corner of the property in question. And funny, nobody has addressed the short alley that runs north and south along our property. So our property actually bridges two alleys, and that tends to be majority of the time a blind intersection in a back alley, which is already a concern. And I support what Mr. Coulson had to say about the volume of traffic with 3 multi-residential buildings, apartment buildings on this one alley. And yes, the business and cozy corner at the end, which is all thriving and doing well. The unfortunate part is there's no restriction or monitoring of the volume of traffic that I see when I live in this backyard. Most of us do. The volume and speed at which the traffic has increased, as if to avoid 50th or 51st Avenue, or to zig around using the smaller alley over a blind T intersection right here at just one property over from the proposed school. We also support dance. Don't get me wrong. We have family members who are professional instructors. We understand their challenges. And I do believe this would probably be an ideal building if only this building wasn't located on this lane, not because I need to protect the lane. I understand the need for growth in the community, and we support that. We try to help grow the community. The safety concern is so great. I was grateful that I was going to be heard because I do oppose this. I don't oppose a dance studio or a fitness studio, but I do oppose it with the way the infrastructure is set here. Lacombe has always wanted to be a walkable community. And Mr. Coulson is correct. There are many people who use these lanes, walking with children, walking with pets, children on their own, 6 years old, the first time out on their bike, going on their own. And the volume that is already here, to see that expand and potentially expand again once we can, God please say that COVID is over, I do see that there will be a problem with the vehicular traffic. This is an alley, it's not a street. And the street is already very busy, problematic as was presented, with the parking restrictions in front of the building, with the crosswalk, a blind turn. These are all of my concerns. I believe in Lacombe. I know that we can grow it. I do not think that this particular structure and the placement of it is supported by the infrastructure around it to continue this community. Young families moved into this community within the last few years because of the community it is. And I unfortunately, listening very close to all the presentations, see that as a greater threat than it already is, particularly with the secondary short alley that moves north and south along the property to that blind intersection, which, by the way, is blind mostly because of the parking lot to the fourplex and the parking lot to the sixplex, as Mr. Coulson said, that only have 3-foot parking stalls and have to back out, and the RVs that are trying to park in. So myself, as a resident of 16 years in this property, has seen this, which is one property away from the proposed bylaw change, as already incredibly dangerous. And I would hate to think that with the number of pets and people and seniors that walk these alleys, how something hasn't already happened, I'm surprised. This concerns me greatly, but I don't want my comments to be seen as trying to discourage business. I'm just so glad that we can have this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Coordinator Belbona, was there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition?
We have one person on the line with an unknown number, but I'm not sure of their name here. If you're in there, if you wanted to unmute yourself and present your name.
Yes, my name is Melissa Legacy Guignard. I'm the neighbor directly west to the proposed property. And as Susie so eloquently said, she basically itemized my concerns very, very well. And also beyond that as well is the privacy issue. Just that's a little bit selfish perhaps of myself, but I moved to Lacombe 6 years ago to a beautiful property that we keep immaculate. And we're so proud to live here, and we love our neighbors so much. And we're totally not against the growth of a small business owner by any means, but we're so concerned for the safety aspect. The young children that walk the back alley, people that are walking with their animals, the older people, it's such a busy, I love seeing that busy back alley when it's being walked and people on their bikes, but it is already so dangerous. I am so concerned with having that vehicular traffic added to it. It's just such a big concern. And unfortunately, I think that if this goes through, unfortunately, we'll have to put my property up for sale because it is just going to be too much of a high stress issue for me to keep living here. And that just breaks my heart because we purchased this home as our forever home. We had full intention of this being the place that we wanted to live and retire to the end of days. So that is the end of my comment. Thank you for hearing me.
Very good. Anyone else? Coordinator Belbona?
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is there anyone else that is online that wishes to speak in opposition to bylaw 400.35?
No, Mayor Creasy, I believe that is all that is in the lobby on the remote access.
Very good, thank you. Any questions or concerns before we move on? And I would ask publicly if there's any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. I do not believe there's anyone online and there's no one else in person here. So I'll just give Coordinator Bellaboro an opportunity to let us know if in fact there's anybody that wishes to speak as someone who is affected by this decision.
Mayor Creasy, we have no more attendance in the teams to speak.
Thank you. Anything from council before we close the hearing? I declare the public hearing for bylaw 400.35 closed at 6:47 p.m. One of our lengthy input sessions. Appropriately go to 5.1 then at this time. So just to keep things fluid here, I think we'll move into request for decision, item 5.1, the land use bylaw 400.35 amendment, the site-specific use and fit for the fitness facility. Manager Teal? Or Planner Teal, rather?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The recommendation from administration is to, at the top of the RFD, to move ahead with a second reading of bylaw 400.35, but then also to postpone further consideration of third reading of bylaw 400.35 to enable administration to propose to council some amendments that may put in place that monitoring and tracking and pilot project timeframe that's articulated in the RFD.
You? Motion for second reading, anyone? Councilor Gullikson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council to the second reading to bylaw 400.35.
Thank you. We'd like to open debate. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So a lot of good comments tonight from both those who are in favor and those naturally who are not opposed to the idea of a dance studio, but are opposed to the rental or have concerns about what that may mean in terms of traffic, in terms of the back alley. Now, I think it was mentioned that that back alley is gravel. Is that correct? I know the ends are paved, but in the bulk of it is.
I don't know if I could say the bulk of it is paved in terms of length or gravel. So in this section, it's gravel, it's paved on both ends.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if there's some sort of middle ground we could find, like maybe we could have, like, I know Susie brought a good point with that that alley that runs north-south, and maybe something as simple as a stop sign at the end of that alley to stop traffic. Maybe there's calming measures we could introduce in the back alley to slow things down. Maybe that would be a compromise here. I certainly respect comments that were made in terms of how dangerous it can be. And I get that completely. Backing out, I back out into my alley, but it's a completely different situation. I have an open alley. I know that I suspect that would be very difficult if you can't see. So I wonder if that's a solution. Is there a way, CEO Dottie, that maybe is there a way to introduce some sort of calming measures? That's why I asked. I mean, it's easy to put speed bumps in if it's paved, but maybe that can't be done. Is there something we can do maybe? Or
So I think that is what's planned or managed deal within the pool as well. You can approval to say the applicant is required to make certain upgrades for traffic flooding in the alleyway, or of course, the direct administration to undertake that work. However, of course, those are all additional costs.
So just to follow up, if I may, so you're suggesting those calming measures would be the onus of that particular business owner and not something the city could do on its own?
Well, I'm not suggesting anything. Of course, you can direct us to do whatever you want. I would suggest, though, typically, the city's approach has been to attempt to hold development costs to that development. So here, if the reason for these infrastructure improvements in the lane is changing use of this property, I think it would, the council's past practice to say, well, those changes are caused by this change and therefore they should be attributable. But just to be clear, yes, if you think that's an like so you take on you being council, or absolutely.
Thank you.
I think we heard from a few of the local landowners that in fact the traffic had to increase substantially of that studio. So perhaps there is some room for the city to be involved in some sort of arrangement as well. But the entire onus on this, if in fact that was a route that council wanted to go. But anyway, Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just looking at the map here of where that crosswalk is, would it be possible to move the crosswalk to the east side of that property? And then that would allow for a loading zone?
You got it.
Good. Sidewalk, north-south sidewalk on 4th Street is on the west side. So you would be creating a crosswalk to nowhere.
Well, it would cross the east and then.
For the north south.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering if there's that much traffic on that currently? Because I mean, to have the loading zone directly in front of the building is more acceptable than having people drop off in front of their neighbors. If there's room, I don't know if there's room for it. I mean,
I think that we would want to look at whether having a loading zone in front of this particular building makes sense. Also look, because with that potential tone movement from 54th Street, there may be concerns of people coming out, dropping off and picking up great that teenagers. So we want to have a closer look just to make sure we're going to first building. But otherwise, sure having a loading zone.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Tonight it was surprisingly in my mind. I really thought people would be worried about what was happening in front of the building. And I apologize that I wasn't sensitive to the back alley per se, but I don't have a back alley. So I wasn't thinking in that regard maybe, but I really appreciate the safety concerns. But I'm a huge, I really wanted this to work because I do think that this is an amazing business in our city, and it does bring people to our city. It brings, they do all the things that Ms. Bingo was saying, and it's really, really good stuff. But the safety of that alley, I hear it. That would concern me. I thought the activity at the front, I guess you're used to 50th Avenue just being busy in front of your house. So that's less of your concern. But I too am with Councillor Connick. I wish there could be a way the city could work with this business, but that's a slippery slope that I would want to know a bit more about. Having said that, if we stop this process at second reading, will that end this business? Will that just end the possibility because of the timeline that she was speaking to? Yes, I would want more specifics on that timeline.
I don't think that that's necessarily something that we can answer this time. Councillor Hoekstra, it's a fair observation. Undoubtedly, it would certainly cause some time delay, which could potentially affect it, but if that's necessary by council, that's not really under our control. It takes what it takes, so, fair comment though. Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. In the perfect world, the church would be the back of the lot and the front would be in-out parking, but we don't have to do it. We have to do it. The alley, east-west alley, comes out on the scenic trail, does it not? So one way of dealing with the T intersection is, like, is there really a purpose of having the north-south alley? Could that be absorbed, offered to the two people lots to, like, that eliminates that T to the two residents on each side of the back alley going north-south? Like, what's the purpose of that? That's obviously been there many, many years, but that would deal with that the safety issue of the T intersection if you absorbed the north-south alley into the residential lots. Now, would that be an option?
I haven't looked at the utilities. Building, I can't remember. So I don't know what the there. I think you could deal with the safety issues on the T intersection there quite easily with some cutoffs. Corner cutoff like we have modern arrows. I imagine in the merger safety was. Therefore, on the term safety, I think I'm saying the larger risk accident, vehicle to vehicle collision would be from someone backing out. Because if you know them, you're fine. Differentiate that because I think of the traffic collisions involving injury to the home. I don't have a recollection. I can someone being injured in an alley. Collision. That's not a high risk, like a intersection.
I'll echo like everybody else's response, like who doesn't want a business owner that's passionate of this community, but it's, and even if we don't deal with this building tonight pertaining to this building, sooner or later, it's going to come back with somebody else wanting to rezone it for another business because it's obviously that only fit is for business purpose, right? So.
Chief Cuddy? So that actually does remind me of the point you made earlier in the presentation, Councilor Ross, about the parking in the rear. So this area would be considered by most planners a prime area for commercial development and zoning to start expanding out into these more traditionally living homes. But with the higher amount of traffic, they become more and more valuable as commercial properties and expansion. When I look at your land use, so your municipal development plan, the downtown core, which a number of the overlays would apply to this area, if you foresee it as eventually being a commercial area, so consider it that way. You actually have policies that promote active definitely activity on the street, which requires new parking lots for the rear buildings and developing buildings with minimum to 0 setbacks. So what you're seeing at the rear, the parking in the rear, that building close to the street from access is actually something that as a long-term vision.
Sorry, Paula. Sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, like another option for front safety, like we've obviously got pedestrian and flashing lights downtown. Is that, you know, to bring up the concern of pedestrian safety, you know, I'm sorry, children are quick, and if there's wheels parked, that's one of the highest risks is coming out. 15 vehicles, so doing like traffic lights at the city, like obviously going to be as there's more development out there, like we're saying, it's higher density of pedestrian as well. So that something that the city could do more of is promotion of pedestrian safety.
Right. So that is something that we try to work towards. We have active transportation
plan under development, as per council's plan. Here, yes, absolutely, some sort of pedestrian. Because I think those are considered at this location before. So again, you're sort of back to discussion that Councilor Conick had. How much is that a city responsibility versus how much is it a developer or change that's driving that? And you could say, well, this is just the straw that broke the camel's back. Actually, 90% of the demand for the pedestrian accommodation was there before. And this tiny change is just the one that's now bringing it to. Or you can say, oh, no, it was fine. It's all of this development. I can tell you that the city past, in kind of similar circumstances, has looked at approvals and the impact that they may have had on driving the need for that improvement as part of its responsibility. So if they approved, say, a gas station, a specific location, and didn't collect any money for lights that then were needed later, the city has said, well, that was our own choice. City didn't collect the lights, so we'll pay the 40% or whatever that's related, that should be related to this existing development that was approved without lights. So you could go the alleyway, you could go pedestrian accommodations. I'm not sure that the pedestrian lights would resolve the nearby resident concerns about that.
Councilor Jacobson?
Thank you. Just like posting that on your presentation in particular, let's consider something for that. I can't quite tell from the site plan here, but is there enough room on the west side for a side access driveway? Is there enough room on the west side of the building for a side access driveway? Yeah, there's 3 meters.
It would be tight. Planner Teal, do you happen to know what the setback, the west side yard setback on this property is?
Mayor Creasy, actually it does very much visually look tight. Historically, there was a driveway going back to when it was, I believe, a church before it became the school that was went up that exact same west side. I think we only have around 12 feet to work with, which is barely enough for a one-way. We're only going one direction, one vehicle at a time, past the west side of the building, which most likely means that if that would be either good for an entry or good for an exit, and it would still be sending some traffic out the lane, as opposed to, I think there was one suggestion in a presentation about isolating the parking lot period from the lane and only relying on a front driveway.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in an analysis on whether or not the business can operate with, I believe it was 70% drop off, having some sort of drop off zone on 50th, and the balance of people who want to remain in park and, negotiate a little bit back and forth to access a back parking way, through that driveway on the side there. Especially if those numbers are correct, that it's a very small percentage of people who want to park their vehicle on the day to watch the dancing. So I would be interested in seeing that. But furthermore, I guess I think CEO bringing that up earlier, the point about this being a prime area for this kind of expansion, because really, if you go to any city at all or any growing area, there is no residential like this, butting onto the kind of main arterial road in the downtown area. And as you go out further, you start to see them. But you will definitely see that, it transitions to these sort of commercial type businesses that are on these single family lots that have been converted, and it goes from there. So, while I'm actually like Councilor Herbst, I'm completely sympathetic to the safety concern. That's why I'd like to see that idea put forward and analyzed. But if I had to choose right now, it looks like I'm going to say so I don't I would be in favor of this ultimately, because I do think at the end of the day, this type of business specifically on this street and literally within half a block from the downtown area is ultimately in the best interest of the home. So that's my 2 cents.
There's been a tremendous amount of input about the safety of this alley. And just for clarification, Chief Cowdy, does this alley differ in width than other alleys within the city?
Up to my knowledge, again, I don't actually have the exact ability to measure it. From what I can tell, standard width, that would have been the same as in town.
So given that this is a well-established area, would it be reasonable to expect that there may be some progressive encroachment upon the width of this alley that might need to be addressed as well, or?
Yes, often with these older alleys, we do see mostly vegetation encroachment, but sometimes it's garbage bin enclosures that people have constructed or extensions of their driveway. So that may be causing some perceived constraint, particularly when I'm looking at the overhead. It looks like the gravel part of the alley has been more encroaching on.
You know what, while I'm not interested in seeing this become the speedway in the alley, I think we need to address all of these concerns together. Given that it's been outlined that a very high percentage of the clientele that uses this apparently is on a drop-off basis, I would find it very hard to believe that they would choose to use the alley for that purpose, either as a customer or as a management. I just find that quite bizarre. And saying that, I think that someone else mentioned that it does need to be in front of the property as opposed to in front of the neighboring property for a drop-off. So as a bare minimum, I would like to see some reconfiguration of that side of that crosswalk. I expect it would need to be moved elsewhere, perhaps on either side of it, a certain distance. Something would have to change there, because to have the volume of traffic, which judging by these numbers that we presented with, we're looking at, say, 50 vehicles a day, up to somewhere that sounded like around 2/3 thereabouts. So 35 or 40 vehicles a day that would use the drop off. To have it a drop off area in that close proximity of a crosswalk is irresponsible, I would suggest. So there have to be some changes there. And I think those other concerns with the alley, I think there's some work to do, regardless of how this goes. There's some work to do in this alley, because the concerns were brought about safety, I think, were genuine, heartfelt, and whether we need to do some assessment there. If there's some encroachment in areas that are making it particularly dangerous for people to back onto the alley, then those will have to be concerned, or have to be addressed rather, for everybody concerned. So that was my two biggest items. The third one with that alley and the T intersection, I expect that was done an awful long time ago when the property facing onto C&E Trail, thank you, wanted to have an alley. That was one of its. Given that we're talking about basically 3 homes, I mean, even if it were a dead end back alley, if the T intersection was seen as that big a deal, and the measures that you had suggested with stop signs or following measures, whatever it may be, somewhere there's got to be a solution to make this acceptable, because when push comes to shove, unless these numbers are grossly inaccurate, I really don't see that we're seeing anything other than an incremental increase in traffic. I'm not suggesting that it's not an increase. It just has been observed by Mr. Wilson to suggest that traffic has become become more and more prevalent there. I have no reason to doubt that. I think it has across the entire city, and I don't know why that alley would be any different, especially with the addition of the commercial venture at the far east end. I think that's a very reasonable thing. Given that, I think we've got some upgrades and some mitigation here, regardless of how this goes. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I just would like to counter or give a different side to the drop-off zone, that it does not need to be in front of the building. Because it's a class of 10, 15, that means possibly for sure 10 cars. They can't all be in that zone anyhow. So why would we want to worry about the crosswalk and the drop-off zone? I've had to go to the outreach school. I don't need to be at the front of the building. You just go down the street then. So is that really a focus to change the crosswalk? Like, I guess I disagree that would be one area to change when you're right on a T intersection there. But I too would like to support this business moving there with safety measures being back out.
Thank you. Really fair comment. I think that my reasoning is simply to avoid unnecessary extra traffic stopping in front of the adjacent households in the hopes that it would be more in front of the existing business. That was my reason. And Councilor James.
Yeah, my apologies. I forgot I had a follow-up for the CAO as well too. Just for my own identification, is there a property tax difference for the city if this were to go through, as a modified, R1 site versus simply rezoning it to permitted or discretionary use as a commercial site?
Slightly. So the building itself would still be taxed the exact same, regardless of the underlying zoning. The land will have a different value applied to it because of the different set of allowable uses, commercial uses that where commercial zoning and residential. So you see a slight increase.
But as a follow-up, I would imagine your recommendation for best practice in that scenario would be if this or future councils in or zone that area, not to look at it piecemeal, but to look at the block and grandfather future. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's part of it. The other thing is that if you rezone it to commercial, the city actually has a legal obligation to approve permitted uses on that site, and with its historic development as residential property and then a church, we thought that might be better considered at a time when a new building is going on.
Councillor Connor?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I would certainly support giving second reading to bylaw 400.35. As you've outlined, there's a number of things that we'd like to see administration come back with, whether it's calming measures or moving the crosswalk, or whatever the case would be. But I would suggest that third reading should probably come back sooner rather than later, at least 2 weeks' time, so that gives the owner, if possible, clear direction. I'd hate to see this get stretched out. As she had mentioned, she has a plan in mind. So I would certainly like to see second reading go through tonight. I'm not sure if third reading's a good idea tonight, maybe in 2 weeks, just so we can get those, an idea of what calming measures or whatever the suggestions that come out of today's meeting would look like in terms of. Those would be my only two comments.
Body, is that a reasonable expectation to have the necessary documentation ready for the meeting on 28th?
We're going to attempt to break. The first is we'll look at possible movements of that crosswalk or adjacent drop-off pickup spot. We'll look at the cost of RRFBs or pedestrian accommodation, pedestrian length of that location. Look at possible traffic calming measures for the alley and associated cost for them. Separately, I'm going to be tasking our bylaw enforcement to go and have a look at encroachments that may or may not exist. Alley?
I'm just going to interrupt there. So just a high level, just to see it, this is not a detailed survey.
No, they'll drive by and see what's going on.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Similar, look for specific history of the accidents, students with injury that we have in this alley. So other downtown alleys to go to. And I will investigate whether or not we have traffic along that alley. Possibly.
Do we have a motion? Thank you. Councilor Ross?
I'm sorry, is it reasonable to put a stipulation to have the access on the west side of the building? Like, it just seems it would be great. It would, in my opinion, it would reduce traffic in back alley, and it would be, I don't know, it's just in, out, less parking on the streets. I don't know, and there's just, just another option I'd like to see explored. Like, I don't want to see any more personally cost to the business owner, because it's already been some very challenging times. But it would just, I think, accommodate more safety issues if vehicles were in, out, access to back parking. And it just makes sense to me, like Councilor Jacobson from Birdsville.
I'd like to see a brief assessment of that. I would have a desired effect, because I'm just not totally sold that individuals entering onto 50th at a night from a single location like that is necessarily.
We will also include a possible requirement for your consideration of building. That is, asked us reasonable, yes, requiring an access to delineated access is completely reasonable.
There's pros and cons of safety. If you have less vehicles on main artery, less likely children come up between vehicles if parked vehicles are behind the building rather than on 50th. And I can see both sides.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I have a number of notes. I'll try to get through them quickly. Some of these we've already addressed, but the idea of a one-way access, I don't think should be immediately forgotten about. I think that is a potential issue. Our solution, especially given that supposedly the traffic is increased because of the access to the pharmacy. If you make it one way, then that's bound to cut down on that. I don't know which way is predominant. I'm assuming people leaving the pharmacy. Do you know what I mean? So if we were to make it that it's a one way, assuming people like to follow the rules and will pay attention to a sign, that would alleviate some of that traffic. Again, I'm not saying that is the solution. I'm just saying that should be just given a little bit more consideration if that's possible. I did also have it written down about a driveway on the west side. It did appear to me to be wide enough for one. If the traffic parking in the back is as light as suggested, it being narrow, like one way or the other, shouldn't be much of an issue. However, the proximity to the intersection, I think, probably will make it a no-go, but I guess I haven't seen it in person to consider that. I do have concern about the use of laneways. I guess why it seems a bit odd to me that a laneway would be used so much for pedestrian, not for vehicle. Like, to me, the expectation is that is primarily meant for vehicle. And so when you as a pedestrian are now using it in that, in that format, there's just an inherent risk that you're taking on. It's like walking down a street. It's primarily intended for vehicles. So I guess that is a little bit of my concern. I have a very busy laneway behind my house now. I had a busy laneway in my previous house. In fact, I used to park in the garage there. I got in the habit of actually backing into my garage so that I'd actually have a better viewpoint when I left. So there's things that residents can do as well. And so I guess I don't live on that street, so I'm not trying to be insulting, but I just find it interesting that it's considered such a pedestrian use, but it's a laneway. So I apologize if that's being obtuse, but it's just an observation. Then getting to the growth in business that we're somewhat promised by this business. And I could see that happening, especially with this being large and being able to house what it may have the potential to house. Of course, that is going to increase the amount of students. Even if it doesn't increase the overall amount of students, it might increase the amount of classes they're taking. So they're going to be in and out of that building more often. So in some ways, I worry that the growth is actually a negative for this property. And I guess I would be curious as to know, and I should have asked at the time, what the business owner expects, like over time, that growth would be, because I assume that would not be immediate. Another concern is in some developments we would require, and it was mentioned earlier about to maximize that parking space in the back, that it would be paved, I believe was the comment, so that the spaces are very clearly delineated. That would be particularly expensive, I'm thinking, and probably prohibitive. I don't know if we would require that, but to have that back parking area work the way that it really should, there has to be some way of, you know, through like painting and putting curbs and et cetera, and I believe that was mentioned by Planner Teal. And then my final comment that I scratched on here was to do with the drop-off area. And I don't think that a drop-off area in front of the building would be safe or a good choice. But again, the drop-off area doesn't have to be designated. It just has to be an area that's just underutilized. For example, next to Rexall on, you know, this main road that we're talking about, I don't think I ever see vehicles parked there, to be honest with you. And that's only a few doors down. It wouldn't be encroaching on anybody's business. You just have some kids walking down, you know, the sidewalk a few blocks. Not a big deal. And again, I will say that I would not designate it as a drop-off area, but I think that that would be a very practical use for it. Same thing with the business across the street. There is 54th, like very rarely is there parked vehicles there. The business that was referenced earlier does in fact have a parking lot on their premises to handle, you know, clients that are attending that. So we should be, you know, factoring that in like we do with residents, that, you know, you run a business or you have a house, you are able to accommodate your parking. So those are just the things that I'm scratching down on here. I am prepared to vote in favor of second reading today, but I am not in favor of going to third reading, because I think we need some of these answers before we do that, and a little bit more time to sort of think about this. It's a very difficult situation for me. I'm very conflicted because I think that this is a great opportunity for the youth, particularly in this community and the outlying area. But I also am trying to be very sensitive to the people that would be the most affected by this. So yeah, so those are my thoughts, and thank you.
What else? Coordinator Alamono has been the one since we heard the motion that we are to consider. Could I have you read it back to us, please?
The council gives second reading to bylaw 400.35. Motion was made by Councillor Gullickson.
Anything before we consider the second reading? All those in favor? See none opposed. Second reading is passed. You've heard that I think the majority of the council would like some additional information to be able to render a proper decision at a later date. So I'm assuming there's no third reading for this evening. Very good, thank you. (7:30) or 2.5 hours in, is every, we take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at 7:30. The floor is yours for the snow clearing policy review, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Administration is reporting on the outcome of the 2020 to 2021 snow clearing operations to provide council with an opportunity to give feedback. At council's request last year, this report has been updated to include year-over-year snow clearing statistics where they are available. Also, the report format has been standardized to include a service delivery report, notable occurrences, a public feedback summary, and a section on recommended policy amendments for each city division responsible for snow clearing on roads, trails, and the associated bylaw enforcement provisions. All departments generally report having adequate resources to adhere to the snow clearing policy in 2020 and 2021, with no recommended policy amendments, with one exception. And that is that the roads in Midway Center be added to the city's snow clearing policy as a priority number 2. And with that, I will open it up to any questions from council.
Thank you. Councilor Hoekstra.
I move that council directs administration to add the Midway Center. Oh, did I miss the first? Is that the first one? That council directs. Carry on. Directs administration to add Midway Center roads to the priority 2 snow clearing schedule on the snow clearing policy.
Any questions or concerns? Let's go over. Very good. All those in favor? Thank you. That was unanimous. What else?
Is there another motion? Okay.
Service delivery portion, I guess, Chief Gotti, we just have a brief update on, is there, what stage are we at the snow receiving area?
Director Thompson, can you please provide us an update on the current status of the snow storage facility project? Snow storage.
Sure, yes, I'd be happy to. Tenders have recently closed and our consultant is currently reviewing those tenders. I can confirm that both tenders are currently under budget, but that information is still currently under review. And but we do expect it to come under our budget for that particular aspect of the project.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Is it reasonable to expect that that facility would be available for use for the upcoming season then, or no?
Yes. Yes, it would be.
So would administration like some sort of indication as to how to proceed with the use of that facility? Are we proposing citywide to start with? Are we doing phases? How are we approaching this?
So we'll be, instead of using the future public works site, the Glen Thompson phase 2, all of our activities, storage activities will occur at this site instead of.
Thank you. Councilor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Part of this memo was to get feedback on snow clearing policy. There's only one portion actually that I wanted to comment on. And of course, we've heard lots of positive feedback from the community as far as the skating surfaces went. And then I see in here that it's kind of up in the air whether that is to be continued. I'm assuming that at budget time, that would potentially have some budgetary implications, and so that will be brought as potentially an option. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes, that is talked about in the department. So talk about it at the operating budget when new service levels are discussed.
Director Piche. you're up again. Item number 5.5, the bylaw number 253.3, the responsible alcohol consumption in parks.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council this evening is third reading of bylaw 253.3 to allow responsible liquor consumption in designated picnic areas. At the May 25th council meeting, there was a discussion of expanding the designated picnic area to include all of Michener Park. Administration reached out to the Alberta Gaming, Liquor, Cannabis and Cannabis Commission for interpretation of picnic areas to determine the ability to designate the entire sports park. Of the questions that were asked, the following was the most relevant. Does the city have the ability to designate an entire sports park as a picnic area, specifically a sports park where there are ball diamonds and soccer fields? The response from the AGLC was that Section 89.1 allows the city to designate a picnic area in a park, not entire parks, including ball diamonds. Administration also contacted the city's insurance representative to see if there's any added insurance that would be required if the bylaw amendment passes. They said that our current insurance is sufficient and that it would cover the city should any incidents occur. Lastly, administration also obtained legal opinion to determine if there were any concerns or risks that the city should be aware of. Without going into detail, it is recommended to increase patrols in the areas that responsible liquor consumption would be allowed in. For that reason, it is recommended that a letter be sent to the Lacombe Police Service to request an increase in patrols. Administration also recommends increasing the budget for signage to be able to include imagery to ensure that the public would be able to see the outline of the designated picnic areas. There are no changes to the bylaw amendment for first or second reading, and it is not recommended to expand the designated area at Michener Park to the entire park. After the May 25th council meeting, letters were received from a concerned community group and residents, which are included in the council mailbox. Added to the memo for council review are images of a 60-meter buffer from each designated picnic area. This is what would normally be required if there is a land use change elsewhere. 3 of the 5 locations that have been selected have 0 impact on residential areas. At this time, if there are any questions, I am happy to take them now. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Director Piche. Got one here from Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Director Piche referenced items that were in our mailbox. And I guess I just want to be reminded again, why did some of the letters get into our mailbox and others didn't? I was curious how did administration choose what letters become part of the package? Because the public gets to see our package. The public doesn't get to see all the other emails that we received as well. And so I was just curious, because the other thing is too, then they're redacted. And so I really wanted to know who the one person was that sent one of the letters. So what are the rules and why does it seem inconsistent? I know that's a little bit off topic, but it really bothered me on this one.
That's a fair question, Councillor Hoekstra, and I think there's some perfectly good justification for the way that these things are handled. Is that something that you would care to address, Director Piche, or Chief Duddy?
I can just let you know that the letters that I saw were included. I'm not aware of any other letters that were received. CAO Gowdy may have others. I'm not sure.
So typically what the differentiation is that if it is sent to a councillor or mayor directly as an email, then we don't include it in forthcoming email letters. That's just personal correspondence email. If it is sent to administration or CC to administration and the mayor and all councillors, it's kind of like more of a blanket type thing, then we include that in mailbox with that. But if they come directly to you as Director Piche has indicated, I think we actually included all of the ones that we got, but there may be ones that come directly. If you forward those to us, often we try to err on the side of including things
with redaction. We're not always.
Does that address your concerns with that issue?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Thanks, Mark Creasy. I guess I did want to be very thankful to the public for the input on this particular amendment. I think that our efforts regarding this amendment may have been misconstrued as trying to push something through without having public engagement, and that certainly wouldn't have been my intent as a councillor, and I certainly don't think it's what the intent as council as a whole. But I particularly appreciated a lot of the input, and I will no longer be supporting third reading of this bylaw. And I could only support it if Crown Lake was not included. I think the school's input in removing that from this is very strong. It's a good input. I had citizens phoning my own husband about this, so that was a little bit interesting about all of being that he's also a school principal. But when I ran for city council, I was desiring to increase the quality of life in Lacombe. And someone said to me, so do you see this as an improvement for the city of Lacombe? And I suddenly could not answer positively. I did not see that this was the thing that I would want to promote for the city of Lacombe. As much as I'll be the first to admit, I enjoy an alcoholic beverage with virtually every meal, and also maybe not breakfast, but anyhow, yeah. So I was really quite engaged with the conversations around this proposed change, and I cannot support it.
Councillor Lucia, I think all of us received a great deal of input on this particular subject. So for someone to suggest that there was no public input, they are sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. At the time of this was proposed, I think we were in a time of shutdown, and I think as council feeling compassionate to the business town, we looked at maybe another option for to people having other locations to maybe enjoy a meal and a beverage. But as today, as positively, hopefully we are fully out of this to stage 3, hopefully within the next month. I think as we've seen some of our businesses completely open up, I agree with Councillor Hoekstra as well. I'm not in favor of third reading, and I think there's been significant, a couple items that we've had a lot of pushback, and I just don't see the benefit of allowing it in some of these locations. So I'd just rather not deal with it at all. Thank you.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think the key to this bylaw is to, when we're talking about responsible use of liquor. And you would have enjoyed the white wine with your lobster the other night, probably out at the park maybe. And there's actually was talk of that at the Rotary Club about having that right there outside, and they giving people options to go there and have their lobster supper. So I thought there's a positive aspect to this bylaw. But I do agree with, as far as Brandon Lake goes, and to the other area, the Ball Diamonds, I don't like either one of those locations. The other 3 locations I think are fine, and certainly they all receive area for music in the park and for other activities. I think it would be a great location for that. And again, I emphasize responsible drinking consumption. The fish pond, I think, is perfect. And also West Walker Park, if we think there's no alcohol consumption going on at that park, we're naive. So I think this is just a step forward, and hopefully in the future we can.
You, Councillor Jacobson.
Sure. So I'll leave I think from the phone calls, again, obviously I got a lot more, but that's because of where I stand on the position. So I think there's something said for that. So I guess I would disagree with you somewhat, Councillor, when you said you were asked, does this add to the quality of life in Lacombe? I think that's what the phrase, I mean, you said you weren't sure how you could answer it. For me, I could resoundingly answer yes, it absolutely does have quality of life in Lacombe. And I think it's easy to add some qualifiers to that, as Councillor Gullikson pointed out. I will confess on a personal level, I found the letters from the school a little bit difficult from a logical perspective. You know, I feel like if the complaints would have been more from a perspective of this is traditionally not what we have around schools, and while we recognize that, you know, everywhere we go to restaurants, and it's condescending and frankly patronizing to suggest that if they see someone consuming alcohol publicly, that they will now rush out and become alcoholics, or conversely, if they don't see it, that they're going to be prohibitionists forever. I find that argument to be not in line with reality. However, if it would have been framed otherwise, I would have said, yeah, absolutely, get behind that. So that being said, I am prepared to make a motion that council gives third reading of bylaw 253.3 with the elimination of the Michener Park area and the Crown Lake picnic area as part of the approved areas.
Councillor Jacobson, Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So, even with the mention before, or the amendment put forward by Councillor Jacobson, I still will not be voting for this. At the end of the day, I agree with Councillor Hoekstra. I struggle with this as well. At the end of the day, how are we improving the quality of life by being able to drink a beer at the Glen Thompson Fishing Pool? I mean, I can't quite wrap my head around it. I've struggled with the LOC since day one. I've said that. There's a letter here from the Performing Arts Society that says they don't want alcohol at Music in the Park. So wherever that came from, the suggestion that they would, I don't understand. I can't get on board. Yes, Councillor Gullikson, absolutely, there's people drinking at Les Walker Rotary Park. But the whole idea of responsible liquor consumption, if we're saying it's okay to do that now, I see it becoming irresponsible out there because of the fact it's a nice, quiet, tucked away, secluded area. And I can just see now the Lacombe Peace Service rolling into that area and saying, you know, seems a little rambunctious here, and the response will be, well, we can drink here now. And so I really struggle with this one. I can't get on board on any of these locations or voting for this at all. At the end of the day, I was elected to represent the viewpoint of the citizens of this community. And what I feel at the end of the day is irrelevant. When the overwhelming majority, I had one positive and the rest were all negative, say to me that you should not support this. Well, that is how I feel.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So I must confess, coming out of second reading, I had thought that I would support this in principle, but only for the Lacombe Memorial Center. And I would like to have saw it as a pilot before we got too committed. However, that changed when I got our package and saw the feedback from the Performing Arts Center. And I honestly was a little surprised, and perhaps I shouldn't have been, and perhaps I should have reached out to them, because we were all making quite the assumption that they would be in favor of that. I'm quite sure that quite a few patrons would be in favor of it, but as far as the actual organizing body that makes that happen, and for a lot of people coming from out of town that come to it, that was a bit of an eye-opener. And so I do appreciate that they sent that in, because that did actually turn my opinion on things. While I do think that for the most part, people are going, should we have proceeded with this, would have been able to be responsible. The fact that it throws great concern for them is an issue, and they contribute a lot to our community, and I guess I have to hear that. I definitely agree that it has no business being around a pool, an area that would allow liquor consumption. I brought that up at second reading, and obviously the feedback that we've received since then has definitely, checked that off as, yeah, that was something that we should be paying attention to. I agree with a lot of their recommended, or their concerns. I echo that. I have small children, not small, young children, I guess. It's not that I'm so protective of them wanting to be, you know, protected from everything, but, you know, yeah, it just sets them in a risky situation. So I guess the short answer, what I'm saying is I will not be supporting this ultimately in the end, because I don't feel that enough of our community is asking for this. And I don't believe that it's significantly adding to the quality of life. We're not taking away something that they don't already have access to and are able to do, you know, on their property, at a restaurant. So yeah, that is my rationale for tonight's decision.
Good. So like many of you, I've had lots of input on this subject, and ones that chose to talk to me personally were in favor of it, overwhelmingly so, and thought that the option for a choice of to be able to enjoy an adult beverage at Music in the Park or one of all these other locations they thought was fine. I would say it was built to die on for them, but they thought it was a nice option to be able to have. And quite frankly, I'm in favor of the options such as this. The idea that it's just from its very name, Wisconsin Gillickson said the Responsible Liquor Consumption Act. Some of the letters I found to be a little ridiculous in that there was an assumption or a tone that would suggest that this was going to be so abused and so out of control that it was just going to be unmanageable. And quite frankly, I find that absurd. I think that we have police for a reason when people get out of hand, and I don't think that this is necessarily to promote that at all. I think that it just provides some options for adults to enjoy an outing in one of our parks. In saying that, I don't have a problem with it being reduced to the Len Thompson Fishing Pond, the Les Walker Rotary Park, and the Lacombe Memorial Center. The Music in the Park part I found interesting, that that group who chose not to support the actions of it, and yet they in fact sell liquor at their events in their own building. So I found that a somewhat odd scenario that bit hypocritical, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, in saying that, I don't think that choices for adults to have the option here is a bad thing, especially considering that we're coming out of this pandemic, which everyone is plenty sick of. Not to suggest that we need to pen bylaws strictly around that, but I think the idea of options is a great thing. And regardless of how this goes, that's not to say that it can be adjusted one way or another. And by putting it through, in fact, if we did see that there was going to be significant issues down the road, which personally I find extremely doubtful, certainly a possibility, but extremely doubtful, then we could make adjustments to either eliminate further or wash it all together and remove this. So I thought it was well in line with provincial guidelines and saw it as being a positive move for our city. Obviously, there's some difference of opinion. Councilor Jacobson.
Yeah, one final comment I forgot to mention when I was speaking earlier. I'm sure many of you thought of this, but the tone of all the letters we received just reminded me so much of when we were considering our zoning rules for cannabis. And it was, you know, and I mean, frankly, those were tremendously more passionate. And we had people lining up to tell us that, you know, Lacombe was going to the gutter, essentially. And of course, as you all know, we haven't heard anything else about the issue since that was passed. So I heard them there that I suspect that that these worries are founded more on assumptions that are incorrect than reality.
Thank you. Anyone else? So the motion before us then includes the designated areas Lynn Thompson Fish Pond and West Walker Rotary Park and Oklahoma Memorial Center to declare the final two have been removed. Correct? I'll say make sure you're good. I will ask the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated, 4-3. Thanks, everyone. That concludes the request for decision portion. Unless I overlooked something. And we can move into the information portion of the agenda, beginning with the CAO report. Chief Gubby?
The CAO report is there. I'm happy to report possibly, I would say, the end in sight for double-digit COVID numbers in the city. I was writing this report, I was at 19. So I hope there are any questions about my report.
Don't have any questions for Chief Gubby?
So just a quick one, if I mean,
Sure.
the sewer flow monitoring, it started the north end. So is it something, clearly we're having some rain, is it something that you actively do when it rains, or are you trying to do it? I'm guessing so, correct? Like, is it, or is it?
It's actually continuous monitoring, but you only get to see how much the rain affects your sewers. And so we monitor that background flow day to day, whether it's raining or not. And so the when it's raining, it's the periods we're most.
Okay, yeah, I figured.
Councilor Hibbs?
Yeah, just a question. Well, by the way, there's only 10 active cases as of yesterday or something like that. But I believe that our Public Works is still on like that COVID schedule, for lack of a better term. Is that still something that's ongoing? Like, do you have plans to change that anytime soon, or is that going to remain in place for a little while longer?
Yeah, we're finalizing our back to plans or back to normal work plans right now. But I would say by the beginning of stage 3, returning folks to on-site work as well as the traditional shift schedules. 2 weeks of that just shifting, but yes, very quickly.
So is there other departments that they see that's splitting, perhaps in the recreational facilities and stuff? Has it been seen as a positive movement that will benefit this in the long run? If that kind of schedule was maintained, or has it been disrupted?
Both, I guess. There is tasks that benefit from the longer shifts, for sure. It's an interesting trade-off, actually. You look at the number of hours, right? You actually work less labor hours and more equipment hours under a 4-on-4 shift. And so you trade off on the labor side or increased utilization of capital assets. So with some major assets like grader, the excavator, hydrovac, the equipment is actually a higher value per hour. Don't take this the wrong way. Monetary value than operators on equipment. And so actually with running the equipment more hours, you can save on labor. That's what really the city has done over the last year or so. 4-on-4-off. There's a slight reduction of labor, about 12%. A slight increase in utilization. Allowed us to continue providing the services perspective. I don't think you can do it long term. I know some staff prefer 4 10-hour shifts from a personal standpoint. Others would prefer the 5 days. Ultimately, our employment agreements, these staff all specify, mostly specify 5 8-hour shifts. zone returning to that for the foreseeable.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Christie. You said 10-hour shifts, so most 4 on 4 off or 12s. Would have that you've been utilized for the equipment more, or is there a timeline that you don't need 12s and stay at 10s? Like you said, there was a shortfall of percentage of 12% or whatever the percentage was. If you would have been 12-hour shifts, most 4 on 4 off, 12s, would have that, I guess that just would have that been more efficient yet to still have the staff get their, you said there was a reduction in actual staff hours, which they would want their hours for gross monthly pay.
We did not look at for jobs. I'd have to look at that.
Well, only because it's public works related, I will ask publicly because I said I would. Thanks to our crews for moving both the beavers and the beaver dams that were causing a great deal of backup along the creek, pretty much along the entire thing. And I had an opportunity to speak with them. I understand that there's been some changes to the maintenance schedule for the creek. Are we still, I don't know what the proper terminology is, cleaning out, dressing, whatever it may be, a portion of Old Creek on an annual basis?
Yes. So I believe that our current policy is 8-year rotation. That we get the inspection of all areas. I don't know exactly inspection stuff. Last year, certainly that's annual possibility.
I appreciate you making that public. It was concerned that it was not, and I did my best to convince them it was otherwise. I appreciate that on the record. And I'm sure everyone noticed that the water level is probably down 2.5 feet or something, so it didn't take long for the conditions to change once those dams were removed. Anything else, for CEO? His report? No? Council mailbox from MP Stubbs regarding C21. Questions or comments there? And a member of Parliament, Glenn Calkins, regarding the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I expect everyone would be glad to see this come about on an item that affects far too many families in this area and across our nation, unfortunately. If there's any creative measures that we can undertake at the municipal level, I would extend an invitation to the public and certainly bring it forward to any councillor or myself. We will do our best to either see them move forward or implement portions that we're able to. Then the letter, the FCSS letter regarding emergency social services from May 28th. Questions there? And citizen letter regarding responsible consumption in parks, followed by bylaw 253.3, the facilities bylaw amendment. And then the music in the park letter regarding consumption as well. Any questions or concerns with the Municipal Planning Commission minutes from May 5th? Park County Regional Library Board talk May 20th. And the financial statements from the Park County Regional Library System 2020. Reports. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you. I do have one, Mayor Creasy. I couldn't submit it because of problems with my tablet. been fixed now. Had 3 MPC meetings to report on, May 5th, May 19th, and June the 2nd. And then the major one out of all of those was, well, actually there was 2. One was a home-based business with some parking concerns, which I think we all addressed in that case. It's a big issue for those home-based businesses. And also the commercial building to be demolished downtown, which brought a lot of concerns to us all about the property and how it kept and during demolition.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Sorry, which one? It's the old barber shop on the corner across from the hotel. Oh, that's. Yeah, and it's adjoined by 2 other buildings. So there are some additional.
Mr. Ross, you have a question?
No, I was saying one.
Okay. Reporter.
Just verbal, Lacombe's meeting last Tuesday, we are moving forward with plans of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, including a parade. So we're kind of gambling that stage 3 is going to be in our favor. So we're aggressively pursuing our coordinator, some bands, and yeah, we're really, it's short notice for a lot of things because obviously we're even in contact with our sponsors. So we're kind of, it's basically July 24th weekend. So we're just going to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Our own power group, which I'm a part of, we are going to do the fireworks either at Michener or at Chatham 2 may work with us. We're trying to direct our budget to enhance that significantly. So even doing our own fireworks, we'd like to do more 5-6 inch shots. So we're trying to increase the budget by about $3,000 bit speed. So yeah, it's a lot of fun putting it on, being part of it. But so it's about $1,000 a minute for putting on fireworks. So we're hoping to have bigger fireworks. And yeah, the horse pole and parade, drive-in movie still with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we are going forward. Hopefully everything works with us. We're not shut down again. So
thank you for making that known publicly. I mistakenly advised the ministerial group, the plans group, hold. It was actually just earlier this afternoon. So
okay,
I will certainly see that is changed, and I'm not sure how the flow of information is for the organization, but back there are having people contact them and let them know. Additionally, I would certainly appreciate it.
We have another meeting Tuesday night. So tomorrow. Anyways, yeah. So just we put a lot of path towards our coordinator to get some feedback. If we can get a lot of parade support. We're diligently trying to for the Calgary Sets back or the Red Deer Royals or bands we have in the past, but it's not always successful to get it because there's competition. So here there's no competition, so we're crossing our fingers. So we will be in touch and have a meeting with the city more with our event coordinator and our chairperson because we have some fabulous support with the city for our activities, but we are cutting it down to 3 days just because of short notice and yeah. So
I expect that will be very well received. People will be ready to support and help in whatever way they can. So congratulations for choosing to go ahead with that. Thank you. Councilor Ruka?
I'll do that at the end of the month.
Jacobson? Yes. Very good. I think that is the information portion. Councilor Gullickson? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to say that.
Lincoln.
Councilor Trevor.
I move that we accept the information as information.
You. All those in favor? Very good. And before you are the minutes from the May 25th regular council meeting, are there any revisions required there? Any concerns at all? Well, we can do the motion. Councilor Hibbs.
I move that the May 25th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes be confirmed as presented.
Thank you. Everyone's all good? In favor? None opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Section 8, notice of the motion from May 25th. Councilor Conick.
Anyway, because yeah, I won't, just the process, so again, this now goes to a vote and get the carried, then it'll come to the next meeting with more information from administration, is that correct?
So there's a motion as it is. As that, Councilor Conick and I did talk about this notice in the format a little bit. And consider splitting the motion to two. The issue that we have right now is that this motion is to pass this evening as written. As administration, unclear on what the next step would be. Just said, there's of course two options that are actually included in those motions. Either the question on BLTs or the rescindment of bylaw 2. Both of them we're happy to carry out. The rescindment of bylaw 2, where the outcome would be, we would return to council with those rescinding bylaw over the summer, debate it, and decide about later. If we are to go vote the question on law, then that information, next council, they will decision on whether or not to repeal the bylaw, ban it. So my request to consider it would be to split those motion into two separate motions to be voted on secondly, numbering at your discretion, sort of thing. And then that would give us a clear path of what the next step will be, whether to bring you a rescinding bylaw or bring you a possible question for your approval to move on the ballot.
Councilor Conick, just for the benefit of those watching at home, either now or in the future, I would just have you read the way it is now to put this in context, because they felt the benefit of the agenda in front of them. They probably don't have a clue what we're talking about.
Sure.
Okay.
So as it's written now, and notice motion said that it's written that council include a ballot for a vote on a question at the next municipal election, asking citizens if they'd like to see video lottery terminals return within or surrounding city boundaries, or that council rescind bylaw 2.4. And bylaw 2.4 was passed. I meant to look it up.
Sometime in the past, I think it was right around 94, that this came out originally after a flood site.
Right. And so, do I speak to it?
Yes, sure.
Sorry, my intention was not to muddy the waters. I just wanted to offer two alternatives to, so my apologies to administration for doing that. I just wanted to offer, there's two ways to do this. And I wanted to be the purview of this council, how we approach this issue. As I mentioned before, I think it's a shame that people who play video lottery terminals are leaving our community to do it now. I would like to have the few, maybe 3, 4 restaurant lounges, the opportunity to have VLTs in their establishments so that they can see a benefit to their bottom line, especially given that that particular industry was hit as hard as it has with COVID. I wanted to give them an opportunity to do that. My preference, and I guess I agree with CEO Gallagher, to make it clear, I will break this into two. My preference would be to simply rescind bylaw 244. I think it's the cleanest, easiest, quickest way, so that those restaurants and lodges that want to get them can get them rather quickly. But at the end of the day, if this council thinks it should go via a plebiscite, then so be it. And that's so. I don't know if I should we debate it a little bit more, or I guess is there debate? Yeah, if we can debate it a little bit more and then I can get a clear indication, but I'm prepared to make both and then see what this council.
In order for us to debate it, I think we should bring one forward.
Absolutely. So then I would do that. I would then move that council rescind bylaw 220. Thank you.
Councillor Connick. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, for Creasy. So I have two questions for Councillor Chronic. I guess with the number of things that happened at council lately, I wondered if we are bringing things before council without anybody asking us to. So a little bit this alcohol consumption one, no offense, but has a business asked you to bring this forward? Okay, so that's my first question. And then my second question is, do you feel this will increase the quality of life in Lacombe?
Great question. So obviously there isn't a huge, well, I don't know. I don't think there's a large number of citizens who play VLTs. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I don't think the overall community is going to benefit massively. I just see it more as a benefit for these businesses that want to get them. I just think it's, why should someone go down the road to Blackwell's or to the racetrack and spend money on food and beverages and those establishments when that can be done in our community? And I think this council, I think it's fair to say, I can speak for everyone, that we're all about local. We want to support our local businesses, and this is one more way of doing it. It's not going to be every restaurant lounge. I think there's really honestly 3 or 4 that could actually pull this off, and it's not hundreds of VLT machines. It's maybe 3 here, 3 there, a couple there. But that being said, anything, again, as a former small business owner, I did everything I could to increase my bottom line. I diversified into many different things, Sears outlet, watch repair, whatever, just to try and get more foot traffic, just to increase my bottom line. This is just another avenue for those businesses coming out of this pandemic to do that very quickly. And so that's my motivation here more than anything. At the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, we'll just continue to drive out of town. But I know I've said from day one, I think many of you said that, we'd rather people spend their money here than elsewhere. And that's my main motivation point.
I do have one follow-up for Councillor Chronic. Are you aware that a business has to prepare themselves for at least a year before they can have BLTs in terms of their practices? So if a business has invited family members into their business, they have to stop doing that for at least a year before they can suddenly switch to having BLTs. So by doing this, we will be pitting our local businesses against each other. Does that make sense? The ones that can get the BLT, the ones that would like to get the BLTs, but they couldn't because they didn't know this was coming down the pipe. So I don't know. This is just what I've been made aware of by the business community that I talked to, and they said this may pit businesses against each other because they didn't know it was coming.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think once this, whatever happens, however we vote, people will then become aware. Again, I don't know the whole, how long it takes or whatever. I do know, for example, on the racetrack, they had to cordon off and block an area off. So they still have, families can still go there, but they can't see the BLTs. They can physically see them. And I suspect that those that want to go down this path will have to make those adjustments as well and actually block off or cordon off an area. I don't know. Typically, they're just in lounges for the most part. The racetrack's a little different setup. But so families would still probably go to the dining room, and then typically the lounges are adults. So, but you're right. I don't know the ins and outs. I honestly don't. But I think however we cross this bridge, those that are interested will find out in a hurry, and they will go down that path whether they want to.
That's Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I know this quite some time ago. Obviously, there's some very passionate individuals and groups within the city, and all due respect to them, they felt that they were doing what they felt was best for the betterment of the community, and I applaud them for that. But then on the other hand, I agree with Councillor Connick. Citizens are going north without for their means of entertainment, I guess I could say, and it would help a few businesses in town. And we've always, I felt consistently as council, tried to accommodate the best interests of our businesses and do whatever we can to direct administration to make the process better and so forth. And addictions is a really incredibly powerful thing that affects families, marriages, so forth. But I don't think it's council's decision to control what people do with their social time and with their own decisions. And that's a fine line. But so, you know, I would, as much as everybody put the effort towards many years ago, it was 1994 already, really, it's still an individual decision what they so choose to do with their life. And, you know, I could list you many examples of how devastating it was to families and marriages. But like to say, they're going to do it anyways. They're just going to do it somewhere else other than so, you know, and yeah, in some ways I've been inconsistent because here it was like, you know, oh wow, what's going to happen? The pot store is open. It's been quiet. Like it's amazing. It's actually peaceful. They're responsible. You always fear the worst with change, you know, and so yeah, it's very conflicted what to do, but I still feel if people so to choose that they're leaving our community, good or bad.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Councilor Clonic, do you have an idea of revenues that would be, I mean, I've heard some numbers, like $4,000 to $6,000 a month for 2 machines, that sort of thing. I think it's substantial for some of these businesses to a point of, you know, maybe not making a difference, but certainly making enough of a difference that would be very helpful to them. I also agree with the comments here about them doing it anyway. They're going elsewhere. And how many community groups do we have that go and work casino in Red Deer to get financial support for our community through that force? And this video lottery thing in our video machine, the same thing. Is there some responsibility by government to supply or to help people that have addictions? I believe that's true with the funds that, you know, the government needs to put up, provincial or federal. So, I mean, I would vote for this because I feel that it's happening anyway. Again, just the same as the responsible liquor felt that was happening anyway. So I certainly support this motion.
Councilor Hoops.
I have a couple of questions. Let's start with the process to rescind a bylaw or what would that look like?
I have a question into municipal affairs about that very thing. I've received 15 reports, and I've seen actually install different methods. So maybe, my opinion is that it's most likely, since more than 10 years in the past, simply rescind the bylaw. The passage of a rescinding bylaws, meetings of it. However, most recently, talked to one member of municipal affairs who said that he believes there may still be a requirement to hold a plebiscite to repeal it, given that it was originally brought up. Yeah, I actually think that's incorrect. There's a specific section in GA that says we don't have to do that if it was brought in and more than 3 years have passed and advertised that you're rescinding it, or more than 10 years have passed. You don't even have to advertise. If it's before 3 years, but after 1 year, you have to hold it on the website. I believe that that is the method, but there's a small chance that it's more complicated, which we bring back to you.
I'll admit, I'm a little bit concerned about that method of making this change. Just considering that I worry that it will somewhat cut out the public as far as how they're able to, you know, let their thoughts be known in an informal way. They would be able to, but not like necessarily a public hearing, I guess, is what I'd be kind of looking for. I also have some concerns that it was brought in by plebiscite, and I almost feel like if it's going to get brought out it should also go by plebiscite. So I'm a little bit torn on this. I do agree that I don't like it when government is the morality police. I don't think that that's our role. But I do, this one's tricky for me because it was done by plebiscite, and yes, it's been that case for a long, long time. Like that was done a long time ago. But honestly, I've never been lobbied on this, and I feel somewhat uncomfortable about bringing something like a major change like this when honestly I've had very few conversations about this. Somebody commented on it on passing. A few other people have commented in passing. I honestly think part of the issue is that people don't actually understand what happens with the revenues that come out of this. So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but from my understanding is the provider of the space for VLTs get a cut, and I mean a cut, and then the rest goes to the province. People seem to be under the impression that municipalities gain from this somehow directly. I'm saying that this is very prevalent. This is the assumption by people in the community, that obviously the ones that think, oh, we should have this again. And I think that that is incorrect, and so I'm concerned about things like that. I'll let you address.
Thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Hibbs. So yes, the establishment that has the location does receive a portion, and also a portion is paid back up to some. It's not a huge portion, but it's a portion, and the remainder goes to the provincial government. I think it's great that you brought up the fact that municipalities do not benefit from this directly. However, Lacombe is no different, that we have a lot of very wonderful community-minded groups that access funds from the Alberta gaming GLC, and I don't think it's any surprise where those funds come from. And VLT terminals are one of the sources.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not a direct, here you go, here's your portion of what was spent in your community. And groups have to apply for those, that funding, and they're not always successful in getting that funding. And it's also typically only every so often, like every third year or something, in a lot of cases. So it isn't the windfall, I guess, that some people might have the impression of. Yeah.
So there's two things that I want to address. Who's made that, and I said also just, but actually a year and a half ago, it changed to no longer have those funds distributed through quantity. The revenue is recognized as the control revenue itself, and then they themselves. So functionally similar, but the deals to actually up to. The other comment, site council is mixed, and I would say what we discovered is that it's important to be very clear about an electorate question versus a plebiscite. And so a plebiscite is something that is petitioned and arises from the community, and then the council holds a vote, and it's bound by the result of it. An electorate question is more of like a consultation. You ask the question, and it could come back 52% against one way or the other. You could decide to disregard that outcome and go the other way. So it is non-binding to the best of our knowledge, and we are still awaiting a binding decision from Municipal Affairs on whether that's incorrect. That's to the best of my knowledge. There's a plebiscite which is binding, and there's no electorate on it.
So the original happening was a plebiscite. So it was petitioned by the community asking for VLTs to be excluded from the community in the 90s.
Correct. 1997 to 1998.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Ross?
Well, thank you, Mayor Creasy. So there, in the same time frame, there was other communities that did the same as Lacombe at the time. Have they since then rescinded that And what was their process? Are you aware of how they brought it back? So it's.
They have, it's a mix of who has rescinded and who hasn't. And it's actually a mix of who has held a plebiscite and who has simply held a vote. Rocky Mountain House, for example, they were the same time frame that the home ban, so 22 years ago. And then they actually did all 3 readings of their action for the repeal in 1 meeting. How's that?
So how many other towns, or is there anybody else other than Lacombe that still has a place that there's no BLTs?
So there's Stony Plain.
Councillor Conick?
So just to Councillor Hibbs' comments that there won't be much or less opportunity for feedback, but the process tonight is if the notice of motion is passed, it'll come back as, it have to be 3 readings of this?
So you have a first reading of the repeal, and then you would have a second or third, either a first and second and a third, and then a second or third. You could discussion.
So I would argue then that we will, we've got plenty of feedback about a couple other things this evening. So I suggest that once this comes out, we will hear definitively. And to be honest, if the vast majority, as I said tonight with my way I voted on the alcohol consumption, if the vast majority of people come back to me and say, no way, Jose, well then that I have to defer to that again. So I think we will hear a lot of feedback, I suggest.
Interesting process because it's always easier to get a group of people organized to get something than it is for. I find this bizarre how this was eliminated in the first place. I'd be all in favor of rescinding it this evening. In all honesty, the ultimate public input will be if in fact those machines are utilized and supported in the businesses that choose to put them in. And that's completely their choice, ought to be their choice, in my opinion. So just to let you know where I stand, there's not a lot of gray area in this one for me. Councillor Jacobs.
Sure. Yeah, I also am completely in favor of sending this. And do best I find some of my fellow council's arguments to be interesting. Nonetheless, I also like to comment on, there seems to be some side commentary about the appropriateness of councillors bringing forward motions or they're not through citizen initiative or without some sort of website. And I would suggest to you all that is really what we are elected to do. And, you know, the citizens' input on that is either to not re-elect you to run for election or to vote someone else in who's going to change that. So I don't think we should be too on that side of it. But I will also be voting in favor of rescinding this bylaw.
Anything additional? Coordinator Bellbono, the motion before us for consideration, if I could just have you repeat it, please.
That council rescind bylaw 244.
Was that the way you wanted it?
That's exactly.
Very good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I knew it was simplified. I didn't realize it was quite helpful. Very good. So is there any additional input?
I just got a question if you're rescinding it. Did we be doing first, second, third reading at a later date or is?
Yes, I would say, just to be very explicit about it, if this passes, we are taking that direction as prepare a rescindment bylaw for first reading for council's consideration, not this is it, that's all, it's rescinded. I don't think that.
I don't think it is, but I think this is first reading. If it is, so it's on out to rescind. That is first reading.
You require a bylaw that actually that goes through and talks about the specific bylaw, but that's where I say you could have first and second in one.
Sure. Very good. Semantics, it doesn't matter. It requires a minimum of 2 additional sessions in any event. Kind of bizarre that what we put forward to rescind is not in fact the first reading, but so be it. The question before us and all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those opposed. Councilor Hoekstra so noted. That is carried. And for our next meetings, all at 5 p.m., all regular council meetings, and they are on Monday, June 28th, Monday, July 12th, and Monday, August 9th. You'll notice the single meeting in July there, almost like summertime or something. So everybody can put those in their calendars and let's keep them all at home. Are there any other items outside of the in-camera discussion that we have for us that I have overlooked? Councilor Cox.
I wonder if we should make a motion to go beyond 9 o'clock before the weekend.
Here, make that motion.
Sure.
Very good. It is 8:40 now, so that would be appropriate, I would suggest, just in case. All those in favor? Those opposed?
No, even just, it's slow, I was reading.
So noted, Councilor Hoekstra, thank you. That's carried out.
Been 3.5 years, but.
We do have some in-camera items. Thank you. Councilor Connick, it is 8:40.